Order. We'll just say 1 o'clock, we're right on the nose.
Okay.
And we'll start with a moment of reflection. Great, thank you. First we'll do the Indigenous Acknowledgement Statement. We would like to begin our meeting by recognizing First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples of Canada as traditional stewards of the land. The municipality is located within the boundary of Treaty 18, region of 1818, which is the traditional land of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Wendat, Wyandot, and Wyandotte peoples. So, being there is no public present, don't need to make the announcement. So jump to agenda approval. So we can recommend approval of the agenda. Mover.
Can I?
Yes, sir. Yes.
I attended the pregnant working group meeting last week, so I'd like to comment on them.
Right.
And then other, whatever you think is appropriate.
I know, I saw you.
Great.
Apologies to Lori, I should have added that.
Okay.
Okay, so with that addition, approval of the agenda, so I think Marie. And sorry, so you're taking notes. Yes. Okay.
Okay, so Marie's moving it.
Oh, Chris, sorry.
Take your pick because we all had our hand.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
All in favor.
Sorry?
All in favor.
All in favor, thank you. Bear with me, I'm doing this for the first time. Thank you.
Clear. You'd have to make your declaration clear.
Great, so
Yeah,
declaration,
Declare it's carried.
oh, I declare it's carried, okay,
Yeah,
motion carried. We should have practiced.
okay.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for your guidance. Thank you for your guidance. Okay, so declaration of pecuniary interest and general nature, is there any?
No.
Seeing none. And move on. So then next is reports to be received as information. So the recommended motion that we receive the action plan status, the space utilization study, draft RFP, annual policy review, artificial intelligence part policy. Sorry, I'm just gonna jump. Where do we want to talk about the banking RFP?
I will make a note in the minutes that we bumped it to the beginning. So after approval of the previous minutes,
Okay,
maybe before we go into section F.
okay, perfect. Sorry, just double check. Hang on too long. Okay, so the artificial intelligence policy fundraising report May, CEO service update May. So we have a mover, Sean, and a seconder, Lori. Carried.
No.
No, sorry, I'm jumping.
Sorry.
All in favor. I got it by the end. All in favor. And carried.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's carried.
Okay. So then the previous minutes. Are there any comments, concerns, questions on the previous minutes?
Move to approve.
Move to approve. Moved by Sean, seconded by Chris. All in favor? Great, carried. So, no business arising. Communications, there were not any. Good. Or correspondence. So we can now jump to review. So Jen, sorry, which number was that?
So there's no correspondence and then we could jump right to the banking RFP.
Okay.
And I can do a really brief intro and then I'll just
Great.
pass it on to you, Monica.
That's great. Thanks, Jen.
Monica and I had a really quick conversation about the town moving forward with, I believe, their first ever banking RFP. just to explore banking options. And so Monica had asked if the library board would like to be included in the RFP process. I don't think I'll say too much more. I'll pass it to you, Monica, and then if there's, I guess, any additional comments, I might make a few, but
Okay,
if that
thanks,
sounds good
Jen.
to you.
That sounds great to me. Good morning, everybody. And for those I haven't met, I'm Monica Quinlan. I'm the Director of Corporate and Financial Services at the town. So nice to meet everyone. I wanted to just take a few minutes, and I appreciate you including me on the agenda and also pushing me to the top. I'm out of the office today, but I wanted to make sure we got to this before we started to issue the RFP. But the long story short is that the town has not gone out for a banking RFP. I don't think ever, recognizing that TD Bank has been the only bank in town for quite some time. And likely that had a lot to do with it, because back in the day when cash and checks and things like that were sort of the primary way we would receive funds, we needed somewhere to go to, to deposit those funds and to work with the local bank. But today things have changed significantly. We do still take in cash, although very little. So we do still require some place to deposit, but because of a system of night deposits and things that have just changed from a banking standpoint, it's not necessary that we stay with a bank that's located in Thornbury. Now, whether or not we want to agree or disagree on looking at that, I think the real reason the town would issue an RFP is A, just because it's fair and very transparent on how we manage our finances, and B, because with my experience, TD doesn't often offer the best deal in terms of fees, deposit rates, and although I would say their service is great, but it is also comparable to the other major 5 banks as well. So the reason we started to move forward with this is largely based on the fees and the deposit rate. I had reached out to TD to come in and meet with me when I first joined the town, and they have increased their deposit rate. So I will say that they did provide us with an updated deposit rate, but it's still not necessarily at the market rate that I would expect. Now, things have changed. That was back in September. Obviously, the world has changed quite a bit in terms of what interest rates are doing and things like that. But I still just feel that this would really make sense for the town. Now, obviously, you also bank with TD, and this could impact you. And I think the way it could impact you is they may have wrapped up the library's sort of banking agreement with the towns as well. I don't know that to be 100% accurate, but I suspect that that's true. And I wanted to make sure that you had the opportunity either to join us if you decided to, or not. And if it's or not, that we started the conversations with TD so that you weren't blindsided by what, if any, changes might happen with your banking agreement. I think I've touched on everything, but happy to answer questions if there's any.
There's just one point I want to make to the board, and Laura and I had already talked about this. Even if we were to go in on an RFP process with the town, that we would still have our own bank account because that is legislative requirement. So there's no concern over, is the town wanting to take our bank account away from us? They can't.
No, I think everything would function exactly the way it is today. It would just be and I mean, I'm saying possibly at a different bank. I suspect, that TD will put a good foot forward, but I'm not sure, that they'll necessarily win the bid, and we can't be guaranteed of that. So we just need to make sure that the board is comfortable, with, breaking ties with TD if that's what happens. But nothing will change with the current arrangement. Jen and I have spoken about that, and you will maintain your own autonomy, and we will help with the transition period as well from the town's perspective. But I just wanted to put it out there for everybody.
So do we know if we're, like you said, it could be tied to the agreement? Do we know for sure whether it's tied to the agreement or not, or what? Are
I
we
don't really, it's a good question. I don't actually know the answer to that question. I have to reach out to our TD relationship manager, Palmer. I don't know that for sure, but I suspect that yes, because we are a large client, that it was packaged together, but I don't know, Jen, if you know that for sure or not.
I
I don't
don't
think we've ever
know.
really, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that information, but what I do know is that roughly about for a year, we pay about $1,000 in banking fees. And then we had discussed point of sale terminals. We don't, and that, can you clarify, Monica, whether or not that is part of the RFP?
Yeah, so no, so debit terminals will be an optional piece, largely because the vendor of record with the province of Ontario is Moneris, and they provide the absolute best rate right now for terminals. So we're going to allow the banks to throw their hat in the ring and tell us what they would charge us for it. But it's an optional item. So not point of sale, though. Point of sale should be distinguished from debit terminals, because debit terminals are not point of sale like what you're using. I think with, did you say 3 Square Technology? Is that
Square, yeah.
Oh, sorry, just Square. That is, I think, and I don't know for sure, is a true point of sale where you've got the records of what you sell and all, which is not what we're looking at. We're looking at debit terminals. So the machines, the pin pads you use at stores.
Okay.
And again, that will be optional. It won't be, the banks can put their hat in the ring on that. And if they beat, the vendor of record, then we may consider changing it. We are with TD right now, but we've moved our online facilities, which we've just started accepting online payments, to Moneris because of the fact that their rates are just so much better.
So, is there any downsides going separate from what the town's doing?
I think the only, possibility is that the fees could be, if you're wrapped up into our agreement, I'm assuming the fees follow our agreement, and TD may not be willing to offer that. I'm not saying they won't, but they may not be willing.
A couple questions. And the opposite of your question, is there any downside for the board going with you on that? Actually, to Jen, is there any downside, if, for example, you end up with a bank in Collingwood?
So Monica and I did talk about this because right now, we do have a staff member who is doing deposits on our behalf. Sometimes we do weekly deposits. We really don't deposit a ton of cash. I would say though that the staff member does go weekly to the bank. Do we have to go weekly? No. And if there is a designated staff member at town hall who is doing deposits at, say it's BMO.
States, yeah.
Yeah, what we could do instead of having, like, whether or not that staff member needs to travel, is we would just drop off our deposit at town hall, and then the town staff member would do deposits on our behalf. And that is the way that it works for the Collingwood Public Library, just as a reference, because I used to work there. But that would be probably one of the only major changes. I think even when I was talking with staff and sort of still wrapping my head around the way that we do our finances, is it was really the autonomy for Square. So right now, it probably does make more sense for us to keep our Square terminals because we have direct access to all of that information. We don't necessarily have to go through the town to receive a report or to go right in and see, those numbers. But in terms of our actual bank account, anything that's mostly what's deposited in the library's bank account are grants. So our public library operating grant, Young Canada Works, any sort of summer position or internship we apply for, or the cash we deposit, but then I go and write a check and that just gets transferred right back to the town anyways. So even if we were to go with another bank, we would still have our own bank account. I would still have access to our own bank account. It would just be probably the major change would be dropping off our deposits at town hall instead of having staff go to Beaver
Okay,
or
my second question was around, I think our policy says that we have to have deposits within an institution with a double A rating or higher. I think that's a policy, but I can't say for sure. So I guess I'm wondering where the RFP is being sent and who you'd be looking at.
So the RFP will go out to the big five, the big six. I mean, it'll be BMO and it'll be whoever picks it up, but whether or not they meet our limit, it will, you know, like credit unions will probably pick it up too, but they likely won't meet the credit limits that we want. I've done banking RFPs in the past, and generally towns of this size won't receive things from like credit unions and things like that unless they're really a local credit union that's like right in town. So in the last banking RFP that I issued, we received a response from all of the major 5 banks. So BMO, Scotia, well, even HSBC for that matter, TD, Royal Bank, and I'm missing one, but
Montreal.
yeah, sorry, National. No, BMO is Montreal. Yeah. And National Bank.
So if the library is included, it would be centered out as a separate entity in the RFP, so it'd be like for the town in the Blue Mountains.
Yeah,
Library.
so exactly. So what we would say is that there are 2 accounts. One account is with the town of the Blue Mountains and the other account is with the Ellie Shore Library.
Jen, do you see any reason?
I do have a question. 2 questions actually.
Yeah.
So who would be involved in evaluating the RFP? And then I'm just thinking, once it goes out and something's awarded, like what is the process? Does it go back to council? And is there a motion required? And the reason I'm asking is, I imagine the same process would have to happen for the library board as well. It's just sort of that double
Yeah.
point of approval.
Good question. So from an evaluation perspective, I'll be totally frank. I mean, the truth is that with banking, they all kind of do the same thing. They all provide similar services. They all, you know, sort of bank in the same manner. So it really comes down to fees, interest on deposits, their turnaround time when we do have issues. And I would say to a certain extent also their online reporting. So I suspect that the evaluation is quite simple, but I think what we've added, who we've included so far in the evaluation team is myself, Mike Switzer, who is our deputy treasurer, and we have one more seat available that we have not yet assigned. And and Jen, if you'd like to be part of that, I'm happy to do that as well. But yes, we would definitely, once we've sort of said, hey, this is the way we would go to council and say, here's the results of our banking RFP. We'd like to enter into an agreement with X banking facility. And can we get your approval on that? For sure, we would do that because it's a binding agreement too. So we definitely want to make sure that council is well aware as we go along this process.
And then Jen, your question about how does the library board approve it, or how does the library board participate in that?
Yeah, I imagine it would just be a similar motion to whatever recommended motion goes to council. I mean, it would get messy although I guess it wouldn't technically get messy if the board made a different decision, because it could just be, we just decide to do our own, stay with TD, right? Is that?
Yeah, I think that's totally fine. I mean, it could be, if you did decide to get into the banking RFP, we need to confirm with TD if you didn't, what that means for the library. But I would say that likely if we did decide to sort of carry on together, and let's say, for example, CIBC or whomever wins the bid, we would go simultaneously to both the board and council to say, this is the way we'd like to move forward.
Right.
So, sorry. So just to clarify, we would have to decide if we want to be in on it or not before it started. And then we can't change our mind once the process starts to say, oh, we've decided we don't want to be part of it. We want to.
I mean, technically, no, we could put you as an optional account. So we could do that. I'd prefer not to. Just so that the bank itself knows what they're dealing with, because they need to know certain amounts of information, like the number of transactions, the balances, the types of transactions. But we could totally put you as an optional so that you could change your mind. But when they're bidding, we have to live up to the bid that we've published.
I'm new to all this, so I just.
No, that's a good question. And recognizing, I should share that it is a public process. Like, this is not, it would go on, we use what's called Bid and Go. So the RFP would be posted there. It's available for any bank really to take it and provide a response. But there will be eligibility requirements and criteria, of course, that they must meet in order to be considered eligible to bid as well.
My gut reaction is that being part of a larger bid has to be to our advantage. Because you would have more buying power, and we're part of that, and presumably, you would have a better opportunity to get, reduced pricing, fees and that stuff. So I think it's probably to our advantage to go with this process.
I would agree with you. I think that's, why we're sort of bringing it forward, because I am concerned that, and I don't know, TD may just live with the current agreement with you all and carry on, but they could, come back, because it is a smaller account. When you add the town into it, it adds, I don't want to say clout, it's not the right word, but it adds a substantial difference in terms of what the balances and deposits would be and transactions. So I think that makes a big difference. But that being said, your fees aren't huge. I mean, $1,000 a year is not a lot. So, you may want to consider that. It is not the funnest process to transfer. So I'll say that too. And I think I shared that with Jen. Like, whenever I say banking RFP, my staff goes, oh, nobody likes to, because it is a bit painful in the sense that, you're updating all your EFT information and all your payment information. And so it's not that fun, but it's worth it. It's totally worth it, in my opinion.
Can I ask a question? So thinking through the process and the decision-making process, so then if we said yes and we'll participate, can you structure, or would you structure the RFP to be present the proposal for the joined both town and library, and give us a proposal for library and town separate? Because should some factor, so it might be your criteria, your 5 criteria might all match, but there might be one that doesn't work for us and it's a deal breaker. So I'm thinking about, as we go forward, we want to get charitable status. So understanding a bank's, I not beyond my depth, but if there's a different handling of a charitable account versus, I don't know, but I think there's some criteria that may be different. And again, our size. So I don't know how, I'm putting that on the table because I think if we get to Marie's point, if we get to a point where we're agreeing to something, but it's not 100% great for us, and down the road, then it might also create issues for you if we had to detangle ourselves.
Yeah. So I mean, great question. I would likely not issue 2 separate because it wouldn't really make sense from the sense that when they're going to look at this banking RFP, they're looking at us as a whole. I mean, so I don't think that would actually fare well for the library. But I'll also say that oftentimes, and this could be very true with TD, and and I can understand if, you're uncomfortable with it. When you are a charity, there are different rate schedules for sure, but all of the 6 major banks would extend that same sort of offering. When I say they're all the same, there are certain aspects of them that it is very similar because they're so regulated, of course. But yeah, I don't think we'd issue separate for sure. Not at this stage, because then we're asking for a lot more and separate information. But that doesn't mean we can't include, some of the criteria. recognizing, the town is sort of the big piece of this that we want to make sure is covered. And even that charitable status criteria, doesn't really, I can't think of things that are going to be real big deal breakers or changes for the library itself, but I could be wrong too.
I think it would be helpful if I were able to be part of the evaluation process, and that might help with establishing like that criteria.
Yeah, I mean, I think we
Yeah.
would need to have full understanding of, all of our
Yeah.
criteria, making sure that it's in the RFP. And again, it may not be any different, but just to make sure that we're not, again, down the road saying yes to something that doesn't address our needs. And then, because I have my own business and I am very familiar with the difference in banks and how they address, and to your point about service levels and online reporting. Some of them are great, some of them are absolutely brutal.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. So that'll be a big part of it.
Yeah.
So again, a lot of it stems from the dollars and cents, of course.
Yeah.
But the turnaround time and the response time is going to be extremely important. And then we'll always do a demo so that we can see what their online reporting tools are and how we, for example, import our EFTs or export the bill payments that we receive from individuals as well. So the demo is a big piece of it as well. And the demo portion will only be issued to the top 3 that make it to that point. But the demo is important.
So in terms of approvals, would it come to the board first before going to council?
I would think around the same time.
Yeah, I would
we can
concurrently, I would say, yeah. But yeah,
So
yeah,
you
I would say it's
if
concurrently.
If we have an uncomfortable level with it, I'm sure we won't, but if that occurred and it's going to council, then we've kind of lost any influence.
I think the other point though would be council cannot make that decision on behalf of the library board.
Okay.
They don't have the authority to do that.
Correct.
But
So
yeah,
we
we
would
kind
be-
of missed
yeah.
the structure, my question around the structure of the RFP. And I think I completely defer to your complete experience in this. But if there's a scenario where we decide it doesn't make sense for us and you're saying yes, but the proposal was for both entities.
Yeah.
That's
So
where,
I
that's where I'm
think-
going. It's just, I don't
Yeah.
know, obviously
that-
you gotta think of the language.
So I think
Yeah.
we could do you like the library as optional, but I wouldn't do 2 separate is all I mean.
Sorry, yes, yeah,
If
absolutely.
that's fair.
Yeah,
Because it's
yeah.
true, you could say that you're not interested in doing it. I suspect I shouldn't pontificate on what will happen, but yeah, it'll be what it'll be. Again, I think the rates and the deposits are really what's going to change the town's mind, and that's why I'm a little hesitant to say we would do separate ones, because I would say that you won't get the same sort of, I don't think, and I could be wrong, you'll get the same sort of response if we did it separately.
Yeah, sure.
So we'll
I
make you
guess I'm-
optional, and it's fair. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's okay. I guess I'm just wondering if it's all worth it for only $1,000. From what I heard you say, it's a lot of work to transfer.
It
There's
is.
some cost transfers. So, cost benefit.
But then there's also the stop time that would be.
No,
I
I
don't know
think
how much. It's like minuscule.
But the
Yeah.
town, the town is doing this no matter what. So I suppose,
Yeah.
we're not
Well, I
really,
understand from their perspective, the
Yeah.
dollars are very different.
yeah,
but-
no, I agree. I just mean from a staff timing, like our
$1,000,
staff will be doing it.
even if the fee goes up, to 1,500, we're still talking peanut dollars.
Yeah, and we do have investments. So there's that I was thinking
Yeah.
about too. But the other thing, and I haven't really admittedly had a very detailed conversation with Monica and Mike yet about efficiencies in how we're doing our finances, and not necessarily giving away autonomy by any means, but what are we, I think there are some things that we're doing, we send it to the town and they do the exact same thing. So it's just a matter of,
Gaining some
and it might be
efficiencies for
more
sure.
difficult down the road to have that conversation, maybe not. But that was also something that I considered too.
Yeah, I think that was one piece I was gonna add is that, because I do think that we are duplicating a lot of efforts from the library to the town. And again, always have your own autonomy. You'll always have your own account. You'll always be able to do the things you want to do with the bank account because that's what the library board is in, your intended purposes to begin with. So I think that's all locked and loaded. But if we're at separate banks, it will be really difficult for us to gain any efficiencies in that way. I mean, I just think about when you said, you write a check, Jen, and you hand it over to the town and, we could electronically transfer that. We don't need a check, but only if we're with the same bank, right? So that's where we would lose sort of that side of things is if you wanted to try and look at things to gain efficiencies, I think being at two separate accounts would be very difficult.
So you said you could have the library as optional, so I'm trying to picture what the bid would come, so the bid could come in and say, okay, if we do the town, this is what it's gonna cost, and if we add the optional library, this is what it's gonna cost. And then if it comes in like that, then we as the library can say, for some reason, whatever, no, we don't wanna do it, then you still got the
Yeah.
bids for the town.
Yeah, I exactly. Yeah. So what I would say is we will include that, recognizing that the library is under its separate board and blah, all the things that go behind that. We are including them as an optional account because you'll make your own decisions. So I don't think that's that big. I don't think that's a big deal. I really don't want to issue two separate ones though. We can combine it in one.
Yeah.
No, I knew it wasn't. I'm sorry. That's when it gets a little bit hairier when you're trying to do it twice. Yeah.
Well, then I think we're losing efficiencies if you do it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be interesting though to see if we would get, say, higher rates on some of our investments that we currently have with TD. And I don't know if that would come out through the RFP.
That won't come out through
process.
the RFP unless it's like you have it as like deposits. I can't remember if you have term deposits, Jen, or GICs mostly, but I would like to talk about that as well and sort of giving you guys some other, sort of avenues too that might be worthwhile. But yeah, not that again, investments won't be included as part of it because that's a separate beast and we want to keep that as open. Whoever's got the best rate is who we invest with kind of thing at the time. But obviously within our restrictions, but investments won't come into play here. This is specifically about day-to-day banking and terminals and all that fun stuff.
I would say based on this discussion, we have minimal risk if we go with it.
I think structuring it as options and I think having Jen part of the process, to me, that
Minimizes.
minimizes the risk and helps with clarity, making sure that our needs are covered.
Okay.
So make a motion that we
Okay,
go
so
with
do
it?
we make a motion?
Or what do we do?
You want further discussion and unless you're ready?
Okay. We might have to tweak it a little bit. So the current motion, that this board approves participation in the Town of the Blue Mountains request for proposals process for banking services for the purpose of evaluating potential cost savings and operational efficiencies through shared procurement. Do we,
And including our CEO on the election committee.
Yeah.
Declining maybe.
CEO on RFP committee?
And then do we want to say something about the library being optional?
I think so.
Yeah,
That in the RFP, there would be. The library would have been identified as optional, or identified as a separate account,
yeah,
or whatever.
yeah. I like that with
Yeah.
the
I just have a quick process question, and I
Yeah.
don't know if you can answer this, Monica, or maybe even Counselor McKinley. Can the library board in the motion like, it's not like the board can direct staff, town staff to include the library CEO. I'm just
Can
trying
we
to
say
think
with a
of,
recommendation to include the library CEO?
We can say we support in principle the recommendation of Monica Quinlan, but Monica's got her hand up.
Sorry, can you re-say that, Jen? I mean, we don't really go to council to talk about who's on the evaluation committee or anything along those
Okay.
lines, right? So the RFP is the RFP. We issue it. That's an administrative function. So we won't need to get that from council. It's just the after the fact that when we do award, that we're going to go to council at that point.
okay, perfect, thank
Okay.
you,
Sorry.
that's helpful. Okay, I need to think a little bit about, okay, board approves participation. I think it's the optional language is important to put in here.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, I think Monica knows what we're going after.
Yeah,
Yes.
so Jen, one thing I started to kind of word something here that says recognizing that the library is a separate board, and maybe, how did I put that? Let me rephrase that.
You said a separate account too, which I think was key.
Separate board / separate account, that they will be listed as optional, within the RFP or something along those lines, I think works.
Which is, I think, what you were getting at, Julie.
Yeah.
okay, and I might. I'm gonna write this before.
All right, yeah, type that. Do we need to keep Monica? You're welcome to stay and hear the. I just recognize.
I think I'm hearing that you're going to come on board. So I think that's great. And I appreciate your time, everybody, today. So thank you so much and have a great day and a nice
Okay,
long
thank you For
weekend.
your time, thanks.
Thanks,
See you
Monica.
later.
Yeah, no, I know, I was thinking that too.
Time while we wordsmith.
Okay, so, let me just, did I copy this? That this board approves participation, participation in the Town of Blue Mountains request for proposals process. Okay. Maybe
Maybe start
that,
it with like a whereas, whereas BNPL is, a separate
Yeah.
legal entity or. Whereas we want the CEO, our CEO should be involved in the evaluation committee.
Entity.
um.
Maybe say something like the board approves participation in the town's request process for banking services as an optional.
Well, and it's also slash their own account. So that's,
I think
yeah,
that's in the whereas, I think that's.
Is that in the whereas?
That's what I'm trying to put it.
Yeah, I think that, so go back up to the separate entity,
Yep,
right, okay.
as a separate entity.
With its own account.
But you can do that,
Yeah.
services,
With its own,
as an optional account, you can make
That's
that.
what I'm thinking of, they want it as an option, so it goes.
But it's not an optional account.
It could be an optional.
where.
But we need our own separate account.
yeah,
So
As per
its own,
so we can't.
yeah, with
be-
its
No,
own bank
it's part of
account.
the option of the RFP.
Yeah, so. But
That's-
the RFP is gonna have, they're gonna have to come back with two accounts, one for the town and one
Yeah,
for
I
like,
agree.
yeah.
not requirement.
So they would have a cost for just the town account, maybe a
Mhm.
cost for just the library account, and a cost for both, maybe, I don't know.
Whereas-
No, never both, because we're all
Combined.
separate. Otherwise, we're
Right.
Yeah.
holding it.
Over the services.
No, but they could do, okay, so if we did,
I would
I guess
just-
just going with the library
just say-
option anyway, so, okay, yeah.
So maybe we just, it's a new sentence that just says, sorry, you said with consideration or recommendation that the MPL,
I need to see this in a larger,
the MPL be included as an option,
yeah, can we put it in a,
That's a problem, optional count.
as, an option for inclusion. Option, what is that?
I need to see.
Hey, that's good. And then the CEO sits on the,
Agreement,
because we mentioned the entity, we don't care about.
that looks fine.
Maybe, do we need to say with the MPL retaining its own account, or, I don't know.
You know
No.
what, I think the first sentence captures that, Joanne.
Okay,
I think, yeah,
Whereas the Blue Mountain Public Library is a separate entity with own account, this board approves participation in the town.
request for proposals.
yeah,
And then you could add something like, upon receipt of request for proposals, decision to continue to be involved will be made at that time. Because they'll put it request for proposal.
right.
That's just a request for proposal.
That's right.
Then they'll come back and they'll say, hey, you're gonna get a better deal if we go here. Okay, or actually, you should just stay with what you're doing.
Yeah.
Then we can make that decision at that time. We're not bound by anything past the RFP.
Right,
We can make our decision upon the new information that gets brought forward. So,
Do you think
Because
it's
even if we
worth-
fall away from it, the town can still come back to say, thanks for your fee, we're gonna accept it, but we don't need the option.
or upon review of the,
upon review of the review
Yes.
of proposals.
Yeah.
The board,
Do we need to put that in the motion?
I don't think so.
No,
The only reason I say that too is there's absolutely no way council can make this decision on behalf of the board.
Yeah.
no. So this,
They'll never,
you're right, this just solidifies that we're a willing participant in the process and we have our own autonomy. We can do whatever we want after that.
And then I would say the board recommends that the library CEO sit on the evaluation committee.
And that,
Maybe a semicolon.
And that.
Then and that.
Yeah.
what was the language, the library?
CEO
I don't know why that got turned on.
Sit on the,
sits on the evaluation committee,
Yeah.
or the evaluation committee.
sits would be, you'd have a sits, not a sit.
there's an S on
third person.
CEO, so
or be a member.
Be a member might actually.
Be a
prefer
member.
better.
It seems,
Be a participating member, if you really want to get.
Yeah, I like that better actually.
yeah.
and then,
That way it's not, oh, we'll invite you.
But you're just gonna sit there.
Yeah.
Just don't say.
Yeah.
I went to the evaluation committee and I didn't know I wasn't supposed to speak, and I started asking questions.
Okay, do you want to read this out?
okay, recommended motion. Okay, we have it. That whereas the Blue Mountains Public Library Board is a separate entity with its own bank account, this board approves participation in the town of Blue Mountains request for proposals process for banking services for the purpose of evaluating potential cost savings and operational efficiencies through shared procurement. And that this board recommends the library CEO be a participating member of the RFP evaluation committee. And I have a mover. Carol and Chris seconds. All in favor? Carried.
I'll fix this actually.
Good wordsmithing.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. Okay, so back to the agenda. We are you good?
Yep.
Okay, so we're back to strategic plan update, action planning. So discussion of the 2025 action plan.
Can someone just clarify for me the status, green, yellow, red, what that means?
Yellow, I believe, is in progress, green is finished, and red hasn't been started.
I always thought yellow was caution.
Okay, so that's a good question. That was my understanding
that.
of
Yeah, and I
the,
was wondering
Yeah.
why they was yellow, because we're not cautioning anything yet.
Yeah, so it is more.
So
about-
green is on track,
Green is on.
everything's
track.
Okay.
cool, we're good, we're complete. Yellow is, you need to pay a little bit more attention, and red is, oh my God, we're totally gonna miss it.
That's issues.
okay,
Or something's come up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Can we put that as a little legend?
not, yeah.
And if somebody else is looking at it, they won't know.
Yeah,
Because I was wondering why we had so many cautions when we're
I know.
only starting to implement the plan.
So for today, green means complete, yellow is it's in progress, and red is it hasn't started.
Except we also have colors for headers, so you've got green header too.
Oh, good point.
So we can, that was just based on when I pulled the colors, it was sort of based on the plan that we have, but I think we can change those colors.
Can we just use words like yellow is in process?
Yeah.
Green is, let's say, complete, go
Then
back.
we don't need to legend.
Yeah, then we don't need the
That's
legend,
true. That's,
that is very pretty.
But that,
Causing confusion with those extra colors.
well, I could just use a different shade of green.
yeah, you could just use a different shade of green, yeah. Because I have those colors from the previous plan that we had, the action plan where we.
Doesn't mean we knew what they were for either.
No, okay.
yeah. That was it too. Okay, so do you want to touch base on these? So essentially, yeah, why don't you go through the,
I think the only
Need
one
to know.
for right now that I would like to comment on, is number 2 under community hubs, in terms of council supporting space improvements and expansion. So I did do the presentation yesterday to council on, the
And they all
2024
jumped up and agreed.
annual report. It was very well received, lots of really positive comments after the presentation, but there were questions about, and this may also feed into some of the work Lori's been doing behind the scenes with Craig Leith working group, but questions about whether or not Craig Leith residents use the Ellie Shore Memorial Library, how we're servicing the East End, those sorts of things. So if I look back to the presentation last year, were we really having those conversations about how we're serving the community and sort of talking about expansion? Not really. So this year it was kind of interesting to see how there was interest. And it gave me a little bit more of a platform to talk about some of our space needs. And I did finish the presentation with comments about, what our priorities are this year, talking about the space utilization study and things like that. So I think it's very much on council's radar. And then with the MRFA and all the other things coming, it shows red on there, but I don't think that's an accurate color.
This
Yeah.
is where the words might come into play better, so it's in progress or you've given up just.
I would say that it's a green at this point in time because it's
Yeah.
flowing smoothly.
yes,
Now, in October, if we're not in front of council yet, then we might want to put it as a caution. But I would say it's going well, especially now that you've raised it again with council our space concerns.
But if green was done.
No, that's not what green is.
Okay.
No, green is, we don't even pay attention to it. From a project management perspective, it's running smoothly, but just leave it alone, let it continue. Then
Green for go.
yellow is, we need to take a look at it, reevaluate maybe our deadlines or whatever.
From a sort of a staffing perspective too, I do have a meeting set up with the acting CAO, the Director of Community Services, and the treasurer to talk about expansion.
Oh, that's good.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really good.
So that I think also speaks to,
Cause we really
Great.
need that behind us.
Mhm.
I would agree.
You can't go it alone.
Did they raise that, or how did that
Yeah.
come about? Like that?
It did come about because, so I do have my quarterly meetings with the acting CAO, but I also have monthly meetings now set up with the Director of Community Services, and he definitely took the lead on setting that up.
Good. Excellent.
That's
And they
progress.
both had that previous meeting.
Yes.
That's really good.
Do we have a good relationship with the acting CAO too then?
Say you do.
Yes.
Good.
Oh, I shouldn't say that, but I see applying for the CEO.
Interim,
Oh, interesting.
no longer acting, interim.
Oh, correct, yes.
Oh,
Was
That's
that
okay.
decision made yesterday or the day before?
I believe so,
Yeah.
yeah. I saw it in the paper. That's the only way I know anything that that has happened. Nobody tells me anything. I don't get any reports. So I don't get it. Nobody called me, nobody emailed me. I had to read in the paper, but whatever.
So irregardless to the colors on there, is there anything on this page that we should be worried about at this point in time?
No,
So they would all be green.
yes.
I don't think that's where we should be at.
Yeah.
I can actually, I'll speak to one thing that is relevant to, I believe, organizational excellence. It took forever, but I can confirm that I'm now on the CRA account. All of our board of directors have been updated. And so I haven't started on the charitable status application, but I now have access and everything is set up, so I will get on that as soon as possible. But that was really what was preventing me from getting that together last year. So
So has our status been granted then? Is that?
no, so you can't even submit anything. You have to submit it all online through the CRA now, but because I wasn't on the account, and then the former CEO couldn't, there was just a lot of, yeah, it was hard to get that change to happen. It just took forever.
So now you can submit the
Yes.
application.
I can log in, I can see everything, and I can move the application forward, so
Excellent.
I will get on it.
I wonder, I guess since we're all green, we don't need to worry about deadlines. And I guess if there is something that ends up being yellow, it would be good somewhere on this chart to have the deadline that we're slipping on. Or
Together.
would we go back to the more detailed action plan?
Yeah, so I wanted to talk to that, just touch base on that as a process point. So what Jen and I talked about was share this, and I think, the idea was just talk through highlights or concerns, and I mean, maybe have it down rather than going through page by page. But if we feel that that's, or just on the page, where the initiative is.
Well, I think if it's green, I don't think we need to worry about it because it's doing really well. But if it ends up getting a yellow where we're a little bit concerned we're not gonna meet the deadline that we have, then I think we would have a more fulsome discussion on that one.
But irrespective, it's Jen that's gonna be highlighting it for us, so I think we'll need her. Well, she'll know where she's at with each of these things, and so she should just flag for us. I'm concerned about
Yeah.
X, Y, Z,
Yeah,
what can we do to make
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
go better?
yeah.
So I think going forward, my feeling was ideally is we don't need to go page by page, but this page just with the colors. And if you want, if you want to include some key points or reminders, so it's fine. Just to save time, but then we can.
Yeah, no, I think that's
Okay, if that works for everybody. Yeah.
Well, especially, I think the things we have to worry about is if there's anything we have to do.
I was gonna say, the board, you need to get on, yeah, it's okay to flag from.
Is there a final version of this, like multicolor, multi-pages somewhere on SharePoint that's easy to, for us to access? Is there-
I will make it easier.
Is there a file that's the 2025 plan, action plan?
Yeah, which it gives you the details behind.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's just something we.
It's on there, but I don't think it's as easy. as it should be, so I will create a folder.
Okay.
Thank you,
And then
because
I'll share
I
it.
looked and I
You
had,
couldn't find it?
I
Okay.
had the
Well,
one,
so we know we're always looking at the,
yeah.
Okay, I can
Yeah.
do that. Yeah, that's easy.
okay. So any other questions, comments, concerns? Alrighty, then moving on to the updates. Total report.
Okay, so really quick update on the MRFA. The joint council meeting has been postponed.
Mhm.
There have been a few additional meetings that both library CEOs have been invited to with the CAOs of both municipalities. That's the first that's happened throughout the process, but it's been an interesting discussion to have. I think, again, we're hoping to have all of the feedback addressed from our last meeting by the end of May. So then it'll be back in the clerk's hands to find another date where a joint council meeting can happen. But in terms of even the feedback that I have on the final report, I feel that all my feedback has been incorporated so far. So I'll just continue to be a part of any additional discussions before that report comes back to council. But that's really all I have. to
Any
update.
estimate on when it potentially is coming back?
Like when the final report will be ready.
Yeah, like the proposed meeting when it's actually,
I imagine it'll happen in June.
okay.
Was there any reason that was submitted to you? Because there was none submitted to me. I only got a notification that it was being removed from my calendar. So I never received any reason why. Well, I know why it's been delayed. It's because of Collingwood. But I have not been received any information as to why the meeting was canceled. So if you can't go into detail, that's fine, but I just sort of like,
So you can't shed any.
shouldn't if anybody in this room, shouldn't I be aware as to why?
I think,
Right.
I
Collingwood?
guess the only thing I will say is yes, that as a whole, there's no consensus in terms of being satisfied with the final report in comparison to what we asked for in the RFP.
Oh, well,
So it's going over budget. That's where we're gonna run a big problem. We're way over budget now with the consultants and with all this stuff down there.
and
I
the
haven't
worst.
been, I haven't
They
I
won't
haven't
necessarily
been
tell you.
privy to any of those conversations.
Yeah.
There have been no costs to the library board at this point. I'd have to take a look back at the contract too to see, at what point do you just keep delaying it and then, Colliers will say,
You owe us extra money.
yeah, we're not there yet. That hasn't come up,
Yeah.
at least in any conversations
fair
I've
question,
been a
yes.
part of.
It's a fair question to ask.
What Mr. Bleak Blue Conservative, where are we at the budget, right? Like,
well, and Collingwood's not on board from what I hear too. I don't know about.
they're holding up the process because they formed a steering committee.
Oh,
So
You've heard that.
so this whole thing might hold.
I will say though, the steering committee, I don't think has delayed the final report.
no, but anyway,
But there's so many other things happening too and separate, like relating to recreation, et cetera.
Mhm.
I don't think we should be waiting for this in terms of our next steps.
I agree.
I think it reinforces our decision to go forward with our own meetings.
Where we're saying short term is 5 years, and I think
Yeah.
5 years, we just go on our own.
it doesn't take 2 years to do a study.
Yeah,
This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my.
But it is a really important, the more I think about it, like, although it's not a financial cost to us, it is a resource cost. So having to spend time
Yeah.
meeting after meeting when things are held up, just,
it's
I
an
mean, it's
opportunity lost for us if we're dependent. on-
if people are holding their decisions on what to do with the library because of that. So it is just,
It's getting ridiculous.
just an observation, I guess, then. Well, we'll just,
But Jen,
you're optimistic about June and that's great.
but you don't have any major concerns. You say your feedback's been incorporated and
I think so, yeah.
so you don't need the library board involved at this point in time.
No, it's way too early.
Yeah.
I'll just present it to council.
Yeah.
Approved.
I mean, it will be interesting to see what the board thinks when the final report comes out, but I guess my perspective too is similar to the board's where it's not really delaying. At least how I'm looking at the future of what we need to be doing, so. If anything, it's informing some of the decisions that I'm making that are,
Also building relationships with key people at
Yeah.
that level.
and that's been huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's value added for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, any other questions on RUFA? No? Great, okay, so the Youth Climate Action Fund.
Yes, so we're still finishing evaluating all of the applications, but we have received over 15. Can't remember if I said that at the last meeting. There were a few others that came in. But I think we'll be doing an announcement early June on the people who are the successful recipients of the funding. So it's still ongoing, but we're getting there. But yeah, we definitely have received more applications in round 2 than we did in round 1, and good applications.
That's
It's been kind of fun to evaluate them.
great engagement. Great, any other questions? Oh, okay, so the space utilization study. The draft RFP. I'll go through that.
Sure. And I do have to thank Joanne and Julia for really helping put this together. I did run it past the manager of fleet and facilities. He was pretty impressed. He had some really good advice yesterday, or whatever day I was at council, I think it was yesterday. Just in terms of like the objectives, he said, are really clearly laid out, but we may want to, before the RFP goes out, determine like what is the most important thing for the consultants to focus on, because if there's, say 6 objectives, they may just lightly touch on all of them. I hope I'm communicating his advice properly. That's how I understood it. But he also did express interest in being a part of the evaluation process if we want to have him as a resource too.
So I guess first is big questions, because Jennifer's got a motion to sort of go through, but any questions or comments from it? I thought it was well done. Yeah. Okay.
I just wanted to clarify, I assume the staff has been, this has been shared with the staff, or you've requested input from the library staff as to what their concerns are and priorities.
Not recently, so not in the development of this RFP, but I think that a lot of what is in here has captured the conversations that we ongoing have with staff. And I've also felt that even before I took a look at it, a lot of this information is consistent with the gap analysis and all of the other documents that are out in the world about what we need or what is desired. So I was really comfortable with kind of putting it as part of the package without staff consultation directly, but if the board would like me to consult the staff as an additional step, I'm happy to do that.
If you are looking for us to have one primary objective, how do we go about making that choice? Because I agree with you that 6 objectives might be a bit challenging, whatever it was.
I think it could just be, so the one thing I'll clarify too is that the content that's in this proposal, there is a template that the town has where I would basically plug this information in there. So some of the language would be put, like all of the content would be accurately reflected in there, but it might be worded a little bit differently. And I think probably it's just a language thing to add in more of a focus on. Just gonna have to look at these here.
So Chris, in the engaged stakeholders, the library staff are identified as a stakeholder to be consulted with.
Well, with the consultants.
Yeah, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
It's part of,
That's why
the,
you can read
Yeah,
it.
so,
Yeah, so, so
And the
it's
next
been
step.
identified as a stakeholder, in RFP, which is important.
I
Yeah,
think part, Lori, I'm gonna ask you to bring your points forward too, but I think part of this challenge is that some of these are objectives and some of them are tasks that they'll do, which I think is,
I think engage stakeholders, it's a process.
it's part of a process to
Not
get
really
to get to the
Doesn't need to be an
objective.
objective.
Yeah. Yeah, so while we think about that, sorry, I've just made notes, so about including staff and then the objective, and then Lori, do you want to, you had a number of things.
Yeah, so, I'm sorry, this may have been discussed more at last meeting that I had to miss,
Mhm.
but, so it's, the summary, if you're looking at all the physical space in this building, right?
Mhm.
And so also possibility is a change in gallery usage. Is that sort of part of the picture? That's a big piece of our space. And to what extent? I know that it's often used in the programming space now, but it's also a gallery. So are there any sort of concerns about that? Because the gallery is such a big, important part of the town. So I guess I'm saying, if you end up saying, and I'm just throwing this up in the air, or the children's department should be in the gallery,
Right.
well, then now we don't actually have a gallery any longer. So there's certain,
Limitations.
yes, yeah, and that doesn't come out.
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't be part of the library review, it would be a gallery review, I guess, is what your concern is, right?
Well, that's why I think I'm talking about all the physical
Mhm.
space here, including gallery, because gallery is probably our biggest
Programming area.
programming area. And we do use it for programming, we do have it sort of technologically set up, but are there any limitations you're putting around that and protect it as a gallery?
That should be, I would think that
I
should
would
be
say yes.
mentioned.
Should be,
Yeah,
should be,
Yeah.
yeah. that's-
I had structured it, I just, reading through this, I had a different, or sort of structured a different objective. But do you have a couple of other points?
I can keep going.
Okay, or do you want to speak about the objective? So just to that point, I was thinking that if we phrased it, really, the project objective, there's an RFP objective is separate, but the project itself is how to optimize the existing footprint for delivery of current services. And then we can decide, current services plus additional meeting space, plus teen space, plus children. So essentially, and then the backup that we have to provide is, here are our current services. Here's all the gallery. This is what this is what we're required. This is our circulation. This is how many people use computers. So you need to provide them that information. Here's how people use the library
Yeah,
now.
but I would think that
Yeah.
well, if it were me receiving it as a consultant, he'd come in and look at that space and find other uses for it. So that would end up going.
Well, so to the point of in that, and that's what I was suggesting, is that we definitely need to support here's our current use. Here, that space has to stay and just put those, that has to stay as a gallery
For these uses, yeah.
and/or.
The solution to that is not under 2, which is on page 3, where it says explore reconfiguration opportunities. And first bullet is a flexible multi-purpose meeting and event space. We already have that. So I'm wondering if that even belongs on there.
Are you thinking that that's the gallery?
Yeah. Is it not?
Yeah.
There's a lot of events happening there. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we did the technology upgrade in there, so we could do even hybrid events in there.
Or do we modify it so that it's not including the gallery space? Like, is there opportunity to actually have a programming space? I mean, that would come out in expansion, I guess.
Well, this may be sacrosanct, but I think allowing them to consider the gallery, because there are modular walls. There are ways of, it's a gallery, but when we need to have meeting space, we actually have a couple of cubicles. There's modular things, like there are solutions. In a way, I would hate to say you can't touch something. I would rather hear what a solution might be. If we say we still need a gallery,
I guess if they're
Do you know,
looking at
like,
what the current,
Yeah.
what the current activities are.
Mhm.
And part of the goal is not to have those current activities decrease, and that is an event room. That they would need to still recognize the need for that event room. I kind of almost like, you can't touch that because then it forces them almost down into the expansion route to get us what we want, rather than compromising what's happening in that.
Interesting.
Something on the table to think of.
Well, part of the discussion I hope to have with a consultant too is, yes, we've made all these enhancements and we make the best use of that space as we can, but it still is not a great programming space.
No, it's not. There could be
Like-
improvements.
Oh, yeah, like even, I don't know if, well, you've all attended events in there before, where you can hear the bathroom door slamming, you can hear everything else that's happening in the library, because yes, we have like a door, but it's
Not a sound barrier.
it's not a sound barrier. There's other tech things that I could mention, but then there's the space issues too, like even where we store like our chairs and our tables, and there's a lot of enhancements, I guess, that,
Yeah, and cutting that out of but cutting that out of the, the limited the uses for the study won't help. Like, you need to leave it, I think anyways, it should be left on there, because how can we say, we want you to do everything, but not this space? That won't work. We won't have a complete and comprehensive review of the entire space if we say, yeah, but not this room. Oh, while you're at it, not this room and not the bathroom and not that, like, it
But I think,
doesn't paint the picture for a complete study.
yeah, so
And then at the end, the consultant could say, well, I could have given you more, but you tied my hands by saying, don't include this.
So what we can say is we don't want to sacrifice our current ability to deliver on the events and the
And
shows that we're currently showing.
we wouldn't be,
Yeah,
because ultimately, when they bring the study back, when they bring the findings back, when they bring their recommendations back, that's when we say, yes, no, maybe so,
yeah.
right? This is too early, like, this is just for the RFP, right? And the RFP needs to be prescriptive. If you don't include things on it, they do nothing less and nothing more than what you include for this process, just to make it clear, right? Because I've seen a lot of things, a lot of studies where I'm like, well, why didn't they? Well, for example, right, the pay equity review. Well, because we didn't tell them, don't actually talk to the CEO of the library to see if we can afford giving pay raises. Nothing less, nothing more. It's incredibly infuriating to me that you should have to say, talk to this person. But this is how these people work. I should have been a consultant, I swear to God, but they,
Maybe to say something along the lines of multiple programs need to be able to occur simultaneously. Like if we're sharing the space in the gallery for multi-purposes, that's great, except maybe there would be a children's programming event that's happening at the same time as something in the gallery. We shouldn't have to,
Yeah.
it shouldn't be
Great point.
mutually exclusive, right? Like
So we could have a gallery opening of someone's art and then have a children's program happening at the same time, because those happen during the day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that, like currently, it seems that maybe we're only limited to have one event at a time.
so I wanted to, with number 2, now that I look at it, propose options to reconfigure the system to accommodate. So as you're saying, Sean, that's all they're gonna look at is those 3 points. Because
Yes.
we've specified those 3 points. But do we want to be that prescriptive in the RFP?
but if we take it out,
yeah, you're limiting it, right? If you're prescriptive, you're not.
Such as,
Well, I think,
why don't we use
Yeah,
the
I
word
think-
such as?
I think in a way, it's drafting the actual objective. So what's our, like, what our desired outcome is without leaving the witness in a way.
But I think it's important to include the teen and the children, because those are 2 areas where we say we've got real gaps.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
constrained by space. So we definitely want to be identifying.
What about, what is it, the makerspace, what is it?
Makerspace.
Would we want to put something there, because
That's
that
probably
comes
a
up
good
all the
idea,
time.
because that was one thing that's not mentioned.
is it in here?
Is it?
I saw it in there somewhere.
I am wondering, Joanne,
Mhm.
on the, under the background, maybe we identify somewhere in that gallery, because now it's just and art gallery at the end of the,
Right, yeah,
So
Yeah.
if you wanted to library, comment about the library stuff, comment about the gallery.
Yeah, our site for all our, for programming and events, et cetera.
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, I definitely think. I think it would be helpful. To, here are the services we provide, here's all the services we provide. Where they're provided, like here's the snapshot of current use. And then the gaps, as we've talked about. What we're trying to end, because we have, well, the one gap is that current use is constrained. There are more people, we could run more programs, we could do more things. And then the actual gaps of teens and children and multi-use space.
So under number
Yeah.
2, would we wanna, we've talked about designated quiet area too. We want,
Yeah. I might have study space somewhere in here.
And have to put some of these things on the roof.
The story would have been good, but they didn't think about it in the 90s.
I think we mentioned makerspace, I think, you just said study space, there's also, thinking of staff space.
I was gonna say,
Yeah, it's a priority over quiet space.
Yeah,
So the fact that we're looking at all of the buildings also includes, there's issues to do with the staffing.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm also wondering, there's a question of AODA, because we had that audit done.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
asking them at some point to take a look at that. And some of their consider future expansion, their, piece to address the AODA obstacles
yeah. Mhm.
that have been identified in the audit.
Because if they do something with the washrooms, won't that take up space?
good. Unless, I mean, there's a couple of different options there. But would that need to be included in the RFP, or that would just be a document that we would provide the consultants with?
It could be a document, I think there should be a document, the
Mhm.
AODA, there should be one for the gap analysis.
I think when you start, like when you say proposed options for reconfiguring existing space to accommodate, and you have those 3, it's very prescriptive and it's very limited. Unless you're gonna list a whole bunch.
Right.
Well, I think if you put in the words as you had said, such as, or example, then that's not all inclusive.
Right.
That's just some ideas.
As somehows with the AODA report and the gap analysis in as guideline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm,
And whatever.
I like that.
It goes in somewhere.
I have a lot of questions. So you evaluate collection size. So are you looking for a consultant that can actually do the library consulting type stuff? Are you looking for someone who has more to do with building usage?
I did put in the evaluation criteria that ideally the consultants would have experience with space planning in a library or GLAM setting. But yeah, would that be kind of limiting?
Or do you have a concern with the size of the collection?
Well, when I was thinking about what we could do with the space, I definitely think when you walk into the library, and I don't know how previous consultants have necessarily evaluated our square footage and our collection size, like, did they include the gallery as part of the library? But when I'm looking at the library itself, it is very collection heavy versus community space. So, if for any reason we weren't given the green light for expansion, what could we do to solve some of our space issues? We could reduce the collection size.
I think that, to me, that comes back to, we have to give them the information, because when we actually look at the numbers, collections, and it's significant. So I wouldn't be suggesting that we reduce it. I would say, how do you more efficiently support it? Because again, unless we have more information and people are not taking out as many books, but if I remember some of the reports
We do
comparative
have,
to other libraries, we have quite a
our
big
print
use.
collection circulates well.
Yeah,
It
and if it does, then you don't want to touch what our users are, we don't
Yeah.
want to interrupt that. We might want to reconfigure it.
Yeah, and it could even be
But-
bulky shelving.
Yeah, I think because that's back to the space size as opposed to exactly, we're not asking them to say how many kids programs we should run
No.
or the types of kids programs. It's just, we know we need I think it's more about the space. That's a good call out to make sure we're talking just the space. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, evaluating the collection layout is good.
But not the size.
Yeah, excellent.
I agree, because as a librarian, still want to see us have a good collection. I'm sorry, but that to me is still.
Well,
Yeah.
and our community reads.
The other topic I think that five question represents is you want to evaluate size of collection based on all of TDM, all of the
Yeah.
town.
Yeah,
Mhm.
And you're assuming, in a sense, from one library facility, but it's actually one end with two library facilities. So size of collection gets all muddled up in
Yeah.
different
Mhm.
questions.
Yeah.
So you want to stay right now with the size of this, within the four walls of this building, in terms of the study. So, we think size, I
Yeah.
just think it adds some level of confusion.
Layout
that's
is
a good point.
Yeah.
I also wondered about the stakeholders. You got the library staff aboard. What are the key stakeholders are you thinking about? I presume, ACC would be part of that, since gallery is part of this picture. But I guess, what do we hope to gain from extra stakeholders? What are we asking them? And who are they?
Who are they?
Yeah, who are they? Yeah, like we have a pretty good, we know what the teens need, we know what the kids, we know what they, we have a good sense of the needs. What are we asking as key stakeholders? Or is it really about visibility and awareness of the study so that it doesn't go unnoticed in the community and that we're trying to solve the problem? Or are we actually asking them for particular input? Are we looking for priorities from them? I guess I'm trying to understand what the key stakeholder piece, because that would be a big piece of a budget. And that's my other question. What's the budget for this?
Well, I talked to Phil about that. I asked, is it weird to put something out without a budget? And he actually recommended that we don't.
Oh, yeah. I don't think you should publish a budget in the RFP. I think we need to
Or
know
we need to.
what kind of money we think we're prepared to put.
Yeah,
Where is it coming from and who authorizes it? Because we've got a bunch of town line accounts, for example, that we have to,
yeah.
some have to be called council.
I think at the previous meeting, we were looking at a reserve that is designated for space feasibility. It's the one that has like $72,000, I think, in it, and I
Yeah.
believe it is a board
It's a board.
reserve.
Yeah, we're.
So that's the.
Yeah,
that's
the amount, the
Yeah.
source we've identified, the amount we have not.
Right. Yeah, that was-
But that's the ballpark, or at least the maximum maybe. So that will limit how much we can get done. on
Do we
this.
have any idea how much these cost?
I don't.
I have no idea.
Consulting fees vary from
They
one end of
do.
the spectrum to the next.
What did the AODA study cost?
In total, so because we went in on it with the town and they were evaluating multiple facilities,
Mm.
I think we only paid like $4,000.
A lot.
Dollars. Yeah, but we got lucky with that.
A deal, we did get a deal.
There's buying part of the town for sure.
Yeah,
And this requires specific skills, like you want someone who knows buildings and libraries.
Yeah.
Typically, you can't just have someone focus on one or the other. They need to have knowledge of both.
You won't know till they come back. Like that's why this is why this has to be so prescriptive.
Mhm.
Because you're taking out all of the unknowns for them and they can go, okay, here's our focus. And they can say this will be $10,000 or $50,000 or 200. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why I think you need to be clear, who are your key stakeholders, how do you want to be involved, because that can really balloon, a project.
They
Well,
could go and talk to two users, say they were key stakeholders, or they could go to massive groups, and that could be the whole part of the cost.
but the consultation with key stakeholders can grow. They can say, we've reached out to this group, this group, this group. this group.
Yeah,
It's up to us to tell them after that point who they should be in contact with, right? That's why they work with the CEO. So we say, you want to talk to the Craig League Community Working Group, you want to talk to this group, you want to, like, we can lay that out, but we don't have to be so prescriptive in this point.
Yeah, if I look back to the MRFA too, we did the consultation plan after the contract was awarded. I can't remember what the language was. I think it was pretty broad. But
And maybe that's the problem, why you're struggling with it still too.
Yeah. I think
When you make it so broad, it just, it's hard to close.
I think for the, in my head, this is the people who can provide perspective on use. It would be staff, the ACC, and I'd love to have somebody who is an AOD.
Well, what about the school? Would you want to talk to someone from the school?
I would keep it to the people who know who's coming in and feels the pain of
Well, that's what I mean,
the
the
restrictions.
school uses it, doesn't it?
Yep.
And are they feeling restricted, or they come back and say, no, it's fine for our purposes? Like, you also have to be
Yeah, I
careful
think
which
they're-
stakeholders you.
That's what I'm saying. I'm actually
Yeah.
trying to think about how we keep it contained for that reason, in that with all due respect to the school, it's not their building. And so I think
So by
reviewing
key
some of the
stakeholders,
recommendations afterwards might make
Do you
sense.
mean key users when you say
Maybe,
stakeholders?
or maybe, yeah.
And then that's another whole discussion on who are the key users. So Jen, if you were to pick 5 people outside of who's recognized, who would you say are the 5 key stakeholders you want them to touch base with? Is it that clear cut? Yeah,
Or do we get them to talk to, or do we go and like visit the new library in Sag Beach and say, what would, if you could do it over again, what would you change? What are you happy with? Like, get feedback of what other successful, I mean, that's a brand new building, but just, get feedback from other libraries, plans and existing. And
It's a brand new building that has no storage in it. That was a big miss by by all their intents and
that's
purposes.
good to know.
That's what all those sea containers at the other end of the parking lot are for.
Wow.
Tables, chairs, yeah, they went, oopsies, right?
Wow.
So
That's where if you've done some
Stuff like that,
homework,
yeah.
then you've
food
got
for thought.
then we learn from their mistakes.
Mhm.
criteria, like certainly before any expansion, we need to have all that info.
So process question, just thinking about, because I think there's a bit of work to be done.
yeah,
Submit your questions in writing to the CEO for the follow-up.
yeah, I
Or
think,
do we want to do a separate little meeting on it, or?
yeah,
have a
I mean,
broader discussion on it?
Julia had said, sort of she and you would be the committee on it. You're suggesting Ryan as well.
What committee on evaluating?
On developing.
Okay.
well, I was thinking Phil, actually.
Okay.
I think Phil knows this building very well and has a lot of experience with, well, I know he also just worked on something kind of similar at Town Hall, but it was more of a focus on staff and council workspace.
Yeah,
I think regardless, I'll definitely consult him.
Necessarily.
Okay. Well, these sort of came up with some really good questions on it.
Okay, let's keep going.
I'm
Sorry.
thinking instead of Julia.
Yeah, that's,
She's not even hearing this conversation.
we're gonna make her listen to the recording.
Okay,
Yes, so yes.
So one of the deliverables, I didn't really know what a thorough analysis of current space utilization meant. I think you may want a thorough analysis of proposed. You're looking for the proposal as opposed to analyzing what we currently have. So I think it's a miswording, and I'm not sure quite what you're getting at.
Don't you need to do that first before you, like,
yeah. You need to figure out what you can do currently until you propose new things.
And the gap
Yeah.
analysis might be what they need to,
Tie it all together.
yeah.
I think that's what I'm saying, I think we already have this.
Only like the gap analysis is that,
So I'm way towards it. So, so what are you asking them to do then? Are you expecting to see a layout of our current use, which we don't really need, because we know what it is? Are you asking them to show some of the areas of issues? I'm just not sure what this is asking
Right.
for. Maybe we should let ask, just, no, I'm not sure what it is. And then we also, further down, we talk about a prioritized list of action steps, high-level cost estimates. So what are the criteria for establishing priorities? Which is not necessarily an answer, that you have to answer to do the RFP, but you have almost the entire process laid out before you actually start at the beginning.
Right.
Like if we want the teen space to be a priority, and that would be what they would focus on, but we haven't made that conclusion yet.
Yeah.
I imagine too that when I think about, Phil mentioning, what do you really want them to focus on? I think having cost estimates will be a really important thing for when we go back to council.
Yeah.
Can we get that out of this? 'Cause it would suck to do this study and then we go to council and then it's, well, come back with some cost estimate, then, oh, okay, now we gotta hire somebody else
Will
to.
be done after the MRF.
And it just keeps going around and around.
Yeah,
So what you're asking about the current utilization, are you really asking for an analysis of improved use of current space or alternative use of current space? So you're asking them, this is what we have, but how can we make it work better?
And what is better? Is that you're
What is
asking
your
as well?
priority
What is
that's
better?
defining better?
In my mind, it's better, we can accommodate more people,
Or more
more
programs
and more
or,
people. So good point to clarify that,
yeah.
what we mean by better. Yeah,
Bill, we don't have to answer that today. We can
nope.
yeah.
analyze these
I think-
questions and come back. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can also, meet offline with Julia too, but I think I have at least what I need to come back with something that is improved.
I think Lori still has more though.
That's okay.
One of them is really tiny, this would not be a standing committee, ad hoc committee. You're not gonna have it for life.
No.
And my other question was really around, I found the wording in terms of membership was confusing. 2 members plus Dan plus Bill. So the 2 members are the next
Board. Yeah.
and in which case, what expertise are you hoping the board is bringing to it, or do you need members that have more to do with space usage?
I would think experience, I mean, I guess this is kind of pointing to you, Lori, but having sort of that historical perspective on our space needs advocacy, like for the last, making sure that's incorporated in the RFP is helpful. I don't know if we have anybody on the board that has experience with space utilization, do we?
Actually, Julia, I think that's the reason she
Why?
I think she's done some for the hospitals.
Mhm.
If that's.
Um,
I would nominate Lori to be the second.
and I guess even experience evaluating RFPs.
That was the other thing, you're looking for expertise, additional expertise. in
Although-
the second proposal.
Yeah, and I think though, like having Phil too, that's his expertise. We know what we need. Phil has experience with space utilization. Phil does know like the technicalities of this space. He knows all of the other municipal spaces and maybe deficiencies. You know, even for like, if we're evaluating our priorities again, is the need for community space beyond the library? Like, could Phil's perspective be, well, we have these two facilities, we have 2 rooms, or I don't know.
Well, we're not trying to solve the town.
No, no.
Yeah.
But I think we fit into the sort of the larger municipal framework in terms of community
Mhm,
space.
mhm.
Like, if we know we need to expand and we know there are no other town facilities that have multi-purpose
Right.
meeting rooms, and we know people come to us for that, I think that's sort of where that fits in.
It does kind of come back to the question of earlier, we're talking about these 4 walls. Because I think that's a huge need in Craigsley area. But I think this study was meant to say, let's do the best we can
Mhm.
here,
That's right.
with the money we have, I guess, and other opportunities that may come along. And that's our first question. Do you want to prove to council that we've done the best we can here?
With this.
So that's our step.
Yeah.
And the next step is, what are the other growth related needs and how does Craigsley fit in there?
And to that point, and this was a question that I had and is included here, is the future expansion. Do we, so this optional, assess the potential for modest physical expansion into the adjacent property? I don't know that we should ask, I don't know, I'm just putting it out there, whether that should be part of this RFP is to ask them for consideration, but to me, it's a whole other thing if you can add a wing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Sort of just think about what you just said, that maybe we just need to keep this is just about the space we have.
I think for
I don't know.
simplicity, I think that makes sense. To go back to Lori's question, we're proving that we've done due diligence in terms of making use of this space. So guys, if we want to have more programs, more X, Y, Z, we really need to expand out to
Yeah.
another wing and maybe even another building, you know.
But I thought we were hoping to be in a position, and maybe it was too ambitious, but we could say, here's how we're maximizing our current space. But if we added an extra wing, here's how we could better serve the community. And council, do you agree on letting us go exploring the cost of adding an extra wing or something, rather than just council coming back and saying, yeah, you guys are doing a great job. And then that's it. And then we've lost our opportunity for,
No, I thought we are still lobbying for an extra.
well, I would like to see that still in here.
I love the part about how proposed interim changes could align with
Mhm.
or transition into a larger scale expansion. So
Yes.
we're not wasting, we're not cutting off our nose to spite our face,
Yes,
right? Like,
yeah,
whatever we're doing won't be a waste. It will be fiscally responsible and flow into something.
Yeah.
In the next stage.
I wouldn't be, I'm not sure whether you were trying to say that lot in particular, but thinking about what you just said, Marie. Some of the expansion could solve our bathroom if it went that way,
Mhm.
right? Am I wrong with that? Because I know that's part, and that AODA picked up on that, is that you've got a big problem with your bathrooms and you can
Yeah.
solve that. So maybe if you talk about, the possible, expansion, I wouldn't lead them in a particular direction.
Gotcha.
okay,
Right.
Okay, good point.
Yeah.
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 So yes, including a request to consider building expansion,
Yes,
because it is this space, okay, then if you had, or if you wanted, I don't know how, I'm just thinking how they would solve, how they'd respond to that is, okay, if in the bathrooms are an issue, your best option is expansion in order to address that. And if you're going to do that, then you can have.
Well, we've talked about having to bump out towards the parking lot anyways, because it's not conducive for, disabilities, et cetera. So we might need to bump in a lot of things, but the whole parking lot might need to be reassessed.
But we can let them make the suggestion.
Yes.
Like so would we take out to the south side of the current building or say, or into the parking lot? Like,
Or maybe just assess the potential for modest physical expansion, period.
so
Just-
It could be any four corners.
Yeah.
Pages.
That's under this number
Yeah.
5, consider future expansion.
Okay. Because then if you
Where
go
you
to
put optional.
the deliverables and the,
Okay, so just remove the EG part.
And it's not optional. So this is the question, I think, just for clarity with the board, that we're all comfortable asking them to include this assessment
Yes.
for potential.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
but then if you go down to deliverables where you say considerations on how to proceed changes align with future expansion plans, but I read that as we would give them our future expansion plans and then they would look at, but we're looking at them to give us recommendations on expansion plans. So I think you have to sort of reword that to like that.
Mhm.
So it aligns better with what we've changed in item 5.
Yeah.
Which then we can get approval on the next step.
That makes sense.
I was making a note to myself at what time I want to reference this recording, 1 hour.
We don't want them to participate in any presentation to council. Because we say in here recommendations to the board,
Mhm.
would we want them to have anything to do with us going to council? Or would we do that on our own?
That's a really good question.
It really depends on the consultants. We did that before. And we brought, obviously, not the best consultant to speak into the circumstance.
Oh,
And I think that worked against us. We would have been better off presenting alone, but it depends on the consultant.
Would we want to
But
say
that
here?
can be our decision, can I?
Yeah.
We
Well,
just.
we say here, formal presentation and findings recommendation to the board and possibly council or something? Because they would include that in their cost, because they're not gonna present to council for free unless it's part of the overall bid that they put in.
Yeah, and we wouldn't want them to present to both well, unless it was a joint meeting. I'm just thinking the board would probably want to see it first.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, but I'm thinking if we go to council
yeah.
to present this,
Yeah,
and we don't, and they wanna get the expertise from the, I don't know, would they wanna see the council or the consultant?
If the consultant has more to add, like sometimes it's just as simple as them being on a Teams link,
Yeah.
right? You know, any further technical questions to the consultant. Yes,
So when they come back with the cost, they're gonna put in the number of meetings. That's
yeah,
part of their
But
cost.
you could maybe negotiate that at the end too, like, would someone be available to go with us to the council? If
If
that's
needed.
what we wanted,
Yeah,
we don't have to make up that decision right now, because I agree with you, it depends
Yeah.
on who it is and what they would say.
I think too, well, hopefully I'm not rose-colored glasses, but if this were to be presented to the current council by the board and the library CEO, I think that we have a pretty good relationship, that like there's trust there. Where that's just something I would consider down the road, like, does it have to come from the consultant to have?
I would prefer it didn't.
Yeah,
I would prefer it comes from the board and the board owns it. I
but
think
we're
that.
paying
I
for
never-
it, we don't.
Yeah.
We're paying for it. we
Yeah,
don't-
yeah.
I think
That's
it's a
what I
good
mean.
point just to include in the considerations is potential meetings to be determined by board. Addition, it is, but because there will be a number of meetings that they'll put in there, and so.
But you can, again, you can pay separately
You
for
can pay
that
separately
down
for that.
the stream.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's probably easier to negotiate.
I don't know, you have to have
Yeah.
it in this original.
Cause I know just looking at proposals, they'll come and say, we're gonna do 5 meetings with stakeholders, we're gonna do 2 meetings with the board, we're gonna do 1 meeting with council, and here's the cost. I mean, that's how they'll break it down.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, free meetings are not inclusive.
so this will come back at the June meeting.
And I just add, we're almost done, I swear to God. Just structurally, I think what we need, the RFP has a purpose and it has a timeline. And the RFP has a purpose, deliverables, and a timeline. The project has a purpose, deliverables, and a timeline.
Yeah.
They're 2 separate things. So just making sure that we're clear, we're looking for a partner to help us deliver XYZ by this time. And what the project entails that they're gonna deliver on is a little separate, just sometimes the details get mixed up. And, because we have to have a decision point as to who,
agreed, yeah.
there's the criteria for the actual who we choose,
Do,
that's all.
would you prefer if that when it comes back in June, it's in the set template that we use? Yeah, okay.
It would be good if
Yeah.
what we saw in June.
It'll be a
actually
lot
gonna
longer,
send out,
but, okay.
because I'd like to see what's actually gonna be sent out.
And if we're hoping, if we're looking in June for our approval of the RFP, when do we hope to get a response back from people that are bidding on the RFP?
That's what I
When do we
mean, so we
hope to
have.
get
so
done
what's our-
this year?
Yeah. what's the-
Yeah, I mean, the timeline.
How long we
Yeah,
put the,
To
it
give
out
them, I
there.
mean, what's the normal time? We give them a month to come back in 2 weeks? I don't know what.
I think a month is, I was just looking at, because I haven't put out the RFP for the circulation desk. But there was a timeline in there that I was revising and I feel like it was about a month.
Yeah.
But I think it also depends on how many other RFPs the town has out there, what those, I don't know, there's probably a couple of other factors.
But if
to
it goes out in July, and then we expect a response by the beginning of August, do we expect them to have it done by the end of the year? They're part of the analysis and the reporting.
To me, that seems like a pretty short. I don't actually know how long.
Well, I
Is it
would suggest we
reasonable?
think about it and, have some timelines put into the
Oh,
RFP.
yeah. yeah.
So that, because it makes a difference as to who you can pick, because somebody may not have the manpower to do anything this year.
Yeah.
They might be already taken up, so.
To be devil's advocate, I'd be afraid that putting time sensitivity on it means the price goes up.
But that's okay, because,
Not if it's gonna be $200,000.
but if they come back and say, if you want it in your 4 months that you said, here's what it's gonna cost, and then we go back as a board going, okay, well, we were dreaming on that.
But that we still don't get any further. We don't get any closer to reaching our goal. Then we have to start over again. You can only release an RFP one at a time. You have to start all over again. I'm not trying to be
Yeah,
Mr. Negative,
no,
I'm
it's a
just
good-
saying,
it's a good point.
practically, in my experience with the
Mhm.
town, you send out that one RFP, right? And if you put a time sensitivity on it, it's gonna cost a lot more, or you might not get anybody.
That's what we don't. want.
That's what can happen
So are
too.
you suggesting we don't put any timelines on it?
I would go with what,
See what they come back
staff say,
Yeah.
and like with Phil would be the ultimate expert on the RFP process
Yeah.
for building services.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah, it's a good point. And it might be that there's a stage we want, right?
Yeah.
So it might, we can get a first draft or a first something before, by the end of the year, but final is like.
However,
sort of
I'd be
playing with it.
concerned
But
too,
it's
right?
up to
Just
them.
the
It's up to
MRFA,
them.
for
Yeah.
to pick on the MRFA,
Yeah.
not even anywhere close. They even came up with pretend numbers or pretend dates that never happened.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like, gee, it says that you started this process 2 weeks ago. Well, no, we didn't. Why is it in your presentation?
So
Photos.
can you talk to
So,
Bill also about structuring payment?
Yeah.
Based on deliverables.
like, I don't disagree with you, like, it would be nice, but just.
But
try
I mean,
and-
yeah, I'm gonna go to
Open-ended
because
because
Yeah.
everybody loves
You
the
don't-
project management.
yeah.
That's
Yeah, generally they wanna get it started, get it done within the
Which is
same
actually
year.
what we're doing.
Yeah, I would think. so.
Generally.
Yeah.
Just-
Okay.
But they might be already,
Oh,
picked
Lori,
their RFP for
sorry.
this year, so don't have
Okay,
any knowledge.
sorry, Laura has
I'm
a
just thinking
question.
about the timeline question, because we're also, we'll have an election in, 2026 of
Mhm.
council. So to what extent do the things that come back from this RFP are things that the library could implement on its own? Like, we can move a bunch of shelving around, so to speak, right? What kind of budget would we have to do some of the stuff just ourselves, and how much is going to involve a council approval? And we don't want to be hitting, you can't get approval from the fourth year of a council, or a council's going to be implemented in the first year of a council. Like,
That's true.
that happened to us before. We got approval from the outgoing council, but not enough approval that we could do anything. And then we got a new council, nothing to do with the old council's decisions.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to get caught in that kind of timeline, regardless of the RP timeline. So I think we need to be clear about what we think.
Can be
we can do
accomplished, yeah.
before, either on our own or before the end of this council's term.
Would we need council's approval to put an extension? On the library. If it's for
They're
parents.
building.
Their building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the town.
And then they also have to grant the board access to development charges to spend money.
Yeah,
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay, so we are dependent on council.
very, yeah.
But we could probably do, but we could just up internally,
Yeah,
right? I just,
yeah,
depends on the cost involved and what accounts we have.
right.
Ability to access.
So I think that that consideration informs when and what we present to council based on the results. Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, would, anything we can have within our control, we don't have to ask
Yeah.
for approval. We can provide for information,
Yeah.
but not approval, so I think we can move ahead. on
Yes, so definitely do that. Yeah, oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I
So
think
if
it's a
we were-
good point though to keep in mind.
So like if we were to expand the bathrooms and that meant knocking down a wall, we would need council's approval to do that. Okay, but if we were to reconfigure something in here, like knock down this internal wall, that's not good, but we could do that on our own. Or if we needed, I guess it's whether we need to access that fund or not.
The internal question, ooh,
I think what we should do is get the results and
Yeah,
then
one step at a time.
see, and because I feel that anything structural would require participation with the town, because no matter what, there's gonna be
Yeah,
wiring,
maybe
there's
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
but we're getting ahead of ourselves.
yeah.
Let's get this.
I have one additional
Okay.
comment just to sort of inform this discussion too. So I will be attending the library as a space conference on June 18th and 19th. So toward the end of the agenda, when Joanne gets there, the proposal for the June meeting is to actually post it the week after, so because I'll be attending that conference. But that conference, I think, I mean, I'll be really limited in how much I can inform the agenda package with what I've learned, but it might also, inform some of the revisions or any sort of next steps, like maybe I'll come out of that with, some, with a different perspective on how to move this forward.
Great. Okay, so just process question. So we had a motion. We've accepted the report as information, so we don't really need to do anything.
This can come back to the next
Just
meeting.
come back to,
Yeah.
okay, perfect. All right. Moving on to
Policy.
annual policy review.
So what I'll do is, and just timing wise, I didn't have time to go through comments, address them before I posted the agenda package, so I figured I could just open the policies as we go through them. I just don't know if they're in order on SharePoint, so let me just double check here.
I think they are the same.
General share. I thought I did that.
Yeah, they were, sure,
We'll start.
because I made my comment on that, were free, because.
Yeah, to,
Yeah, you put it in there, but you can't, bring up the RFP on very.
yeah. You couldn't do it on the agenda version. The PDF, yeah.
RFP, the same.
Okay. So I don't believe there were many comments on this sort of general statement.
I got a minor change in there. Did I have a minor change?
You had some questions about the dates of the, other related documents or the review schedule. You had a question, not to get on this one.
Yeah, but that question goes to all of them, so the review on would be, we put in today's date.
Oh, yes, and I, typically we do that after. I can just throw it in there now though. Although the formatting will probably get all weird, so maybe not. Yeah, I will wait to do that. But I don't know, I don't think there was really much with this general policy here.
No, I don't think I had a lot of comments. No.
Joint health and safety. This one, I know you had some good comments, Carol. And I looked into this and you are right, I believe.
They should be the OHS,
Yeah,
OHSA rather than the Employment Standards Act.
yeah.
What change does that mean?
So the first line up there talks about in accordance with the Employment Standards Act. But it should be in accordance with the Occupational Health and Safety Act. This is the Occupational Health and Safety Policy, not
Yeah,
an
that's
HR
true.
policy.
We're just taking that.
So just replacing that with Occupational Health and Safety Act.
Couple references to ESA.
Yeah.
But OSHA and occupational health and safety.
That's the same thing.
It's the same, okay.
Yeah.
I do remember Lori, you had something, it's in
Oh,
front.
yeah, and the labor code, that was confused
Oh, yeah.
about that one.
I looked that up. I think it's in both, but I think it does make more sense for it to be the OHSA.
Yeah. Cause I don't think libraries fall under cause you have to be a federal bill, you have to be federally funded and be classified as a federal organization, and the libraries aren't. As far as I know. Do we need to confirm
But
that?
I think it should be right to say, under the labor code, those, the right to know, right to participate, right to refuse.
No, but that's the Occupational Health and Safety Act.
It is in
Yeah.
there, yeah.
Yeah, that's right out of the Occupational Health and Safety Act. It's probably in the Canadian Labor Code too.
Yeah,
But the labor code doesn't apply to the library.
well, and it does make more sense for it to be OHSA. And yes, so Lori, just to be clear, CEO is a non-voting member and a BNPL worker is a voting member, yes. So the MOU explicitly says or reads that the CEO would be a non-voting member, and there's already too many management members anyway. But the JHSC just voted recently to include a BNPL worker as a voting member. That's not in the MOU.
Okay, so I
Um, but
didn't know if that was a typo.
yeah, no, it's right.
Yeah.
It is right, but regardless, we're not required to have a joint health and safety committee. I think,
Which is fine.
yeah, I mean, I think it's important to be a part of it. But, and we technically have our own, but it's, I personally don't think it makes sense. I think we should be participating, on the town's committee, and just, there's a lot of administration that goes in toward having our own internal committee.
I think that was done because we weren't sure of our status with the town's committee.
Right. Right,
But since you're clearly in,
Yeah.
and we have a staff member in.
Yes.
That's important.
uh,
Now, the difference between number one, and number five, and that, they seem to be virtually the same. Except 5 adds or doesn't.
okay, so I think what happened there was. Let me just really briefly, I just want to look at the MOU so that the language is the same. And then remove. I might as well do this. Okay, so that's that. The top one, okay. Yeah, I think that can be removed.
Yeah, okay.
You're right. I'm just thinking of it.
So, yeah, this was sort of a point I wanted to raise, because everywhere I read, the board is responsible for health and safety. would we not want as a board, maybe quarterly, or do we quarterly get any feedback on what's happening, even if nothing's happening? I think that's something that should come forward to the board.
I think this continuous improvement report, that was the report that came to the board last January, and there was a discussion about, well, do we even really need to see this? And then we talked about the risk assessment report and how that sort of serves that purpose.
Well, I guess well, see, because we have the respectful workplace compliance report, but what I would like to see is an occupational health and safety compliance report. So, and it could be just that we've had no incidents. And then as a board, we've met our responsibility. But if you have had an incident, like so-and-so fell and slipped in the parking lot on the ice, broke their leg, now we put salt down on then we've met our, but we don't know if that's happening.
Right.
So I'm just feeling a little bit leery as a board member, not knowing if there's any occupational health and safety incidences or injuries that are happening. If you have any lost time injuries, you probably don't.
We do have some kind of incident report though. I don't know if it's.
I think it's part of the risk, I can't remember which one now, I might be mixing the two of them up. In one of these two reports, there is a section that says the board is meeting all of its legislative requirements for, I think health and safety is on there.
I think that's in the risk assessment, but this is someone, and maybe it's to do with.
This one talks about it.
Harassment or something, where incidents of issue.
Yeah,
That's, but as a board though, we should know if there's any lost time injuries happening in this building. Or
I agree.
with the library. And if there isn't, then you just tell us that. No, there's no lost time injuries.
But I think there's another report that we already get, and could be, make sure we just include that.
Yeah,
But if you can't remember the report on there, it might be the risk.
I think it is the risk assessment.
Can you pull up the risk assessment to see?
I'm gonna pull it up from their website just so that, because I'm sharing my screen. So that would have come in January, or maybe I'll go back to 2024 quickly. My first board meeting. Oh yeah, Carol, you wouldn't have been on the board when this report came. Okay.
No, that's it.
So this is the,
Let's see, respectful workplaces compliance.
Yeah, but that doesn't talk about lost time injuries.
so this is the,
Continuous improvement.
Yeah. I think all we need to know as a board is there a lost time injury? And if there is a lost time injury, what was done about it?
do you think that fits, that could be added into or fits within the scope of this report, or?
What did you had at the very bottom, you had something about zero.
So you're talking lost time injuries, but what about public injuries? Injuries to public, suppose a member of one of
Yeah,
our customers
yeah.
falls on the ice too. We
Yeah,
don't know
because that's a hazard that the worker would be exposed to as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
think this is a good report, but we just need to expand what it
Mhm.
covers. So right now it's called the Respectful Workplaces Compliance Report. But yeah,
It's a lot of mental health though.
That's different. That's in the violence and the workplace harassment
I
requirements.
wonder if you could expand this report to include what you're suggesting, or we just put in a separate report.
I would put it in a separate report. What would be good to see in the policy is if there's a lost time injury, it will be reported to the board. And because if nothing's happening, we don't really need to know. But I don't want to,
Is it lost time injuries or is it incidents?
so incidents might be better. Yes, actually, incidents would be better.
Like just a report at the end of the year summarizing?
No.
Only if there's a problem,
Only if
bring
there's
it
a
to the
problem.
board.
I would like to know as a board member that the problem's been dealt with.
And incident, do you want a general word incident or,
Well, there's incidents defined in the act.
okay.
There are definitions.
Yeah. And it could just be so much that,
Reported to the board
that's,
as.
you know, like if you have repetitive strain injuries, we got someone that sits there and that's it. Then from a board member, I think I've met my responsibilities. But if someone's got a repetitive strain injury and we're not doing anything, it's just keep getting worse and worse and worse, then I would feel badly as a board member that we haven't directed anybody to address that. Not that that's gonna happen, but that's just an example.
Yeah,
Is it something like the health and safety incident report?
Yes. That's what it
That's
is.
not quite the right word.
You're trying to get out of writing a report unless it's necessary? Is that where you're?
Yeah, that you just
which I appreciate.
Yeah, yeah, just if an incident happens, then the board should be told what the
CEO.
incident was and what was done to address the incident and prevent it from happening in the future.
I agree.
But I don't want you to give us, like, we only need to know if an incident's happened. If we're not hearing anything, then we're assuming everything's hunky dory.
No news is good news.
So then you're really asking for a report per incident,
Mhm.
Yeah,
not a quarterly report or anything.
no, just if an incident's happened. What was done to prevent it from happening again? And I mean, we had that huge discussion, we handled it very well with the violence incident.
Oh, there's already things that I could share with the board. But-
Maybe I should never.
Do we put this at the discretion of the CEO or is it?
No, I think it comes.
Okay.
If an incident occurs, the CEO will tell the board.
Shall, should I put shall?
Yeah, I think shall is. And then I think we've met our responsibilities as a board. So we don't need the continuous improvement report. I think that covers what my
Okay,
concern was.
perfect. I'll keep that in there for now. Are we ready to move to the next one?
Correct. Fire safety and emergency.
Yeah, that was just my
Oh,
comment.
yes,
Yeah. And then I realized I could have applied that to every single one.
I'll make sure it's in there.
Where are the safety?
I think we've had this discussion.
Yeah, we have, and at the last time when I was trying to answer the question, I wasn't confident in the dungeon being the safe room, but it is.
Where is the dungeon?
It's in the hallway where the washrooms are.
Oh.
Yeah, but there's no windows, there's an emergency exit, you can lock it. And
Is there a way to communicate with them without opening the room up?
like, is there a phone in there?
Yeah.
I don't believe so.
Have we ever used it?
As a safe room, we haven't had to.
Thank God.
Yeah.
So is that a requirement as a community?
Well, if you're gonna have a safe room in the policy, you have to have a safe room. Right?
Yeah, that
Along
is.
with
in the
laundry
plan.
bucket.
And if the board wants to see the plan, I can share it.
I would like to,
Yeah,
but I just have more interest in this.
well, you have a lot of expertise too in that area. And I haven't, admittedly, I haven't, touched any of our plans just yet.
And then the whole tabletop exercises. How have they been done? What's the status?
Yeah, the last time we all met to do one, it ended up being a larger discussion about whether or not the library should actually be the,
Oh, the media designation.
yes.
Yeah,
And there has been no follow-up since, although I would say, maybe about a month ago, I did drop off our big binder for our emergency stuff at the fire hall, and they're updating everyone's, so I don't know if once that's finished,
So it's
we'll
with Diana.
revisit. It's with
Diana,
Diana, yeah.
That's okay.
but do you just do any, like, do you do fire drills? Just
Yes,
the library yourself?
yeah, I think our policy, we have to do 2 a year.
Okay.
And we, we did have an incident actually. When was it? Then you, you saw the fire truck.
Yeah.
But we did a drill essentially, not too long ago. And I think, yeah, well, yes, anyway, we do drills. Yes, we do.
Good. It was something in the microwave. It was the microwave, yes.
Yes, it was cookie.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know what?
It just
and
happened that I literally was driving
Yeah.
by at the time.
And the fire trucks were in front of the-
Here, I'm like, oh gosh, should I go in?
Well, and of course, it was right after school, so all the kids were here and it was such a cold day and we had to get everybody out, so it was good practice.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's a great drill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we had to air out the library. I don't think the fire department was very pleased, but they were awesome regardless. No one was hurt, so.
Yeah.
But yes, and we do them here and at the depot.
So I don't know, as a board, do we want to know these are happening? I don't think that, I don't know if that falls under our jurisdiction or.
As long as they're happening.
I would say it's operational and I'm following policy. It
Yeah,
is built
yeah,
into
okay.
a policy.
Yeah. I'm okay with that.
I mean, if we did a drill and it was a complete nightmare and there were any sort of concerns that, I don't know, to the facility or anything else, I would definitely bring that to the board.
I don't know if this is the point to ask about it, because we're just talking about the policy, but if we don't feel that we can be a media center, I think we need to make a formal declaration as such. I don't know exactly where the statement is that the town considers
It's
us
in
the
the
media
memorandum,
center.
it's on the
Is it?
memorandum of
I can't
understanding.
remember where it was.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
it says we are the designated media hub.
And and I don't know, maybe it's a question for the CAO is, do they know that? Do they
Yeah.
treat us as that? Do they think so?
Because, the-
Said,
yeah,
Yeah,
but I don't think the library is equipped.
so we're not equipped, and if there's extra risk, if all of a sudden people are here, if there is a huge fire, forest
Or if they
fire
have
or
to
something.
nuclear go.
here, and we're not able to support, this is, I
Yeah.
think there's, I don't think that we should just keep saying that's okay. I think either we need support so that we can actually deliver being a media center, or we need to say,
We need to have it
somewhere
removed.
formally say, we can't support
And
that.
what does media center mean?
I don't know.
It means
So
in the
much
case,
requirement,
in the case of an
yeah.
emergency or a situation, then libraries utilize as the formal media center, like that for the town, so the mayor and anybody involved, they have to make
So does
announcements or
that
do
mean
things.
just disseminating information?
Yeah,
But it also means that we would need to have power.
you need
We
to
don't
have it generated.
And then
So.
we'd also have to look at whether you would need to have people personally, like people physically here or not.
Yeah, as a shelter.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
it.
there'd be a maximum capacity, yeah.
So if it's a media hub, does that also imply physical presence of people related to the media hub? I don't know.
yes, it does.
Yeah.
I think part of the plan too is that library staff would be used essentially to answer resident calls and refer them to the appropriate.
Okay.
So the other thing we found when we did
Channels.
tabletop exercises, because my office was not at the building where the minister was. But my office was a designated spot for the communications director. So he pops at my office one day saying, okay, you're out, we're doing a tabletop. I go, well, where do I go? I had like nowhere to go. It's like, you're gonna take my office. You can't, like, so if you have so much people here, what is that impact on your everyday? If the emergency isn't in this direct area, but it's in the span where it becomes a media hub, how does that impact your daily operations?
So as an action point, maybe we can ask you to understand what the requirements are. And then we can evaluate what we should do next and how we should proceed.
So tell them that you're treating this very seriously. And you're very worried about the responsibility that it implies and imposes on the library and whether you'd be able to meet the need or not. And either that, then they will say.
If they want to expand the building and provide more space in order to enable a
We could
media,
have a media hub room.
we're all over it.
Yeah. So then they may decide that maybe we're not the media hub.
Yeah, I
But
mean, we'll start
Hold
with
on.
we're just gonna
Yeah.
start with clarifying
Hold
what's
on.
required,
Yeah.
one step at a time.
it's not as simple as that, because it's in our memorandum of
Oh, I
understanding.
know.
We would have to open up the MOU, and we don't want to open up. the
That's right.
MOU.
That's right.
You
So
know.
if they're gonna put that responsibility in the memorandum of understanding to the library.
So what I'm gonna explain to you all right now, very quickly, is that the reasoning or the answer that will come back will be, oh, well, the generator's on a trailer and we'll just bring it over. That's answer number one. I know, I don't disagree that it seems it's unfeasible and it's unreasonable. That's the fire department's reasoning right now. That doesn't mean we don't advocate for permanent, that like, we just have to remain clear. Don't be surprised when that's the answer from the fire department, because that's their answer.
But then if that's their answer, then you've covered your obligation.
Yeah.
Right? If that's what the answer is, it's just, I don't want their, like, I was so disappointed that that fall exercise didn't happen.
Yeah.
Because I think that would have brought forward some of the issues.
Mhm. Yeah, I think at this stage, it really is just, let's make sure we're clear on what the expectation is.
What
And
we can do.
know,
Yeah.
and then we need to, if it's in the MOU, and we need to build a plan, then we need to build a plan. But let's, it's just a thing to cover.
But if the expectation is fire department just brings a generator and puts it in the parking lot and they use this boardroom, well,
Mhm.
then that's different.
Or maybe we have Diana or the chief or somebody come to a meeting that can better expand on that too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Because it will be all captured even in the current emergency response plan, but it's a binder that's that thick. And I know everybody loves reading, but
I really don't want to go through that.
no.
no.
I'm just, this is,
Anybody
been
really know
invited,
what's in
Diana.
it? Like, to me, a lot of these binders sit on a shelf and then the crisis happens
there is
and nobody knows what to do.
no, there is, sorry, but there is an emergency response committee, which is comprised of the fire department heads, like the chief, the deputy chief, Diana, who's the one that wrote the ERP, and the mayor and some other designated staff are part of this committee, and they meet annually, semi-annually. I don't know.
I guess they would have met more recently with all the ice storm stuff.
Yeah, they did, but the mayor wasn't here, the deputy
Neither
mayor
was
was on.
the chief.
Here was the chief.
Okay, so we'll
I
get that.
like your idea. Why don't we have someone from that committee come
Yeah,
and tell
I
us
think-
what their expectation is?
I would say more poignantly, the chief
Yeah.
and Diana.
Yeah, because when they identified the library, they would have known what the library could deliver.
And I think, my understanding too is that the chief would like to keep the library as the media center. I think it's more, I think it's just a division, like, there's some staff that think that it should be at town hall and then, but yeah, inviting them here to speak on it, I think
Yeah.
is a good
And
idea.
that we're sure that when we're doing emergency procedures, training the staff, we also know we're
Right.
sharing with them, if it's, if all of a sudden we are the media hub, this is the responsibility. Because right now we don't know.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Well,
Okay.
So if the would, in that situation, the fire chief come in and take control?
Yeah, my understanding is I'm not leading anything. The library board is not responsible for anything. We're here to support.
So they're just using our space.
Yes.
But then you also have to look at how does that impact the operations of the library.
That's our, well,
Mhm.
and
Yeah, but I would say that
Yeah.
would be part of the board's concern as well.
well, being clear on what the procedure is. So if everybody understands the fire chief take control. But then, me as a peon working out at the desk, then okay, I'm going home.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if all of a sudden the fire chief comes in here and there's all these people in here, but the emergency isn't in town,
Yeah,
you need to be able to inform staff that it's okay.
Or if it isn't.
Or if it
I don't-
isn't.
Yeah.
Where did we go?
yeah.
We're gonna get it all figured out.
Yeah, but I think that's a
Make
great
sure
idea,
people know.
to see what their expectation is. Roll the
Well,
line.
and they need to understand why we have questions too.
Sure. Okay.
So we don't lock them in the line.
I don't know, in my head, I thought in the
Right.
case of an emergency, like operations would be at a halt and we would, anyway, it'll be clearer if they can.
Maybe.
Okay. So moving to work alone. I think there were oh,
I
why
think,
did I think oh, there you,
oh,
okay,
that was just my,
right,
that was mine.
okay.
And I noticed, and I started to correct it, and then I stopped, and some you capitalize worker and replace, and some you don't, and some policies you do, and some policies you don't.
I think it should be
I do
capitalized.
too, because I went and started to uncapitalize all, and I thought, no, I think it should be capitalized.
Yeah. Okay, I will make a note to capitalize. And did you notice that in more than one policy? Okay.
Yeah. And then you're also really inconsistent on when you use an acronym and not an acronym, but I was gonna get that, thank you.
I'll
Once
look
you've
at that.
spelled it out, at least once in the policy, in that policy.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you'll spell it out, and then you'll be using an acronym, and then all of a sudden down below you write it out. So,
I only look at that.
it's not mine, that's like.
Yeah. I mean, that's a,
Consistency, yes.
still, it should be corrected. Okay. Any other comments on work alone?
No,
Is that a problem still at the Craig Lee?
I would say no.
Okay.
The odd time we'll have, like, we try not, obviously, to have somebody work
Cause that's how
alone.
it all started.
Yeah,
yeah,
but, yeah, especially during open hours,
Should-
but yeah, I don't
Fine.
think that that's a concern. Respectful workplaces, this one looks like a mess. Because I was trying to align it with, I thought the town, because the town had semi-recently updated theirs, and so Lori had pointed out some duplication in definitions, which I should have deleted them down here. But I did like how, I just felt like the definitions were a lot more
and I
detailed,
did some minor little editing,
like these blues.
yeah.
Yeah. Um. But mostly okay, yeah, I think this is where Lori's,
Yeah,
Points
there's
out.
two sections, the work harassment, workplace and workplace violence, was that the second one where you had moved the definitions that affect higher?
yeah, so just delete where they are repeated.
Now, workplace sexual harassment and workplace harassment, those are two where we had defined a definition.
In the policy.
In the policy, and then you just basically taken it up above, but didn't delete the old
Right.
definitions.
And
you've taken those definitions out of the Occupational Health and Safety Act.
yes,
Or is it
well,
the town?
the towns, I would,
Okay.
yeah, because especially when it's a policy like this, I imagine that it was legally vetted. So pulling from their policy probably makes more sense. And it's an expanded definition, which, yeah. So I will remove the duplicate definitions, but I think beyond defining, further defining things, there wasn't much
No.
else. But this is one that is reviewed annually. Salary administration, this one had recently been updated too, and especially, since the town does do our payroll, I think it makes sense, we definitely need to have a board policy, not just adopting the towns, but at least aligning a lot of the stuff, so. And this, I believe, was,
Yeah, so
More
my
recently
comments were
reviewed.
more just to clarify who
Right.
has, because I'm sure it's the town that provides that information, not us.
yes.
So just clarifying there who's actually doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely keep an eye on what's being proposed to council, and so when we were going through that study last year, I had asked some questions and provided some recommendations for comparators, but at the end of the day, because it's a council project, I can provide feedback, but that's about it. It's their decision. And that's in the MOU.
So yeah, the external data survey, so that's the town that,
Yes.
yeah.
What are you suggesting? We should
Just by,
specify that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
External market survey data will be.
So the town will conduct or the town does or something.
and
Oh, yeah, I think I was confused because that was defined in our policy, but it wasn't referenced any.
That's like it's a question directed at me. Can you tell me what the question is?
I don't know why. I always think, look at Lori.
Because lateral transfers aren't really counted, that there's promotional transfers, there's acting assignments. Unless you want to say something if the acting assignment is a lateral. Because I would, is a lateral transfer acting or are they're laterally permanently moved into that position?
Yeah, I think it just means laterally, like they're moved into a new position.
Or you said, see, the lateral transfers may be permanent or temporary. Temporary transfers are normally given as the growth or learning opportunity. Yeah, I just wondered why you were taking it out,
I think because it's, well,
because I didn't see it anywhere else in the policy.
that's the thing. So we define what that means, but it's not even,
Do you ever do them?
Well, you do it.
Could happen.
Somewhere down
I think
there.
there's no harm in leaving something in,
yeah.
then it's covered. You know what it is.
You do a transfer further down it. One to the second.
There's acting assignments. Yeah,
But that's a
Yeah,
high.
but that's different.
Further down, I thought it was a transfer.
oh, there's, yeah,
Which could include lateral transfer, but I'm not sure, so.
Oh, yeah, no, you're right.
Quickly,
Sorry.
that
Okay.
transfers, promotions and demotions.
Yeah, I guess the transfer could be a lateral move.
and then if you get transferred to a lateral position, I would assume you take your existing salary and be on the same
Yeah.
grade or step up that you
Yeah.
would have been in your other position.
Oh, I would view it.
That's what's not.
I guess, yeah.
Oh, you delete a little section on transfer.
Yeah, I was gonna, that was my question, which I didn't put in.
Yeah.
Was why are you removing
Maintain
transfer?
current salary rate.
It was just because I was, in the town's policy, it was all in the same, so I just. It's not that I completely got rid of transfers, I just amalgamated it with promotions and demotions.
Well, you could add something about a lateral transfer in there if you wanna.
Yeah, so your 5.1 seems to be a reference to a lateral transfer. It's in the same pay grade. You get to maintain your current salary rate, so that's your lateral transfer. Which I don't think appears under. The one above.
Okay, I see what you're saying here.
Yeah.
It just
Then
didn't, I think I did a
should say-
control find for lateral. Okay.
So just, yeah, why don't you just highlight and move that into your transfer promotions and demotions department.
I was going through this, I didn't realize I started accepting all these changes, and I started to disappear, I have to go back. I was like, undo.
Okay.
Now you need your lateral transfer piece in, I guess.
Yeah.
Where? Okay.
Right, because that's, you're just talking about external there.
Are there ever internal secondments?
That might, you might be calling it something else down in your promotion.
So if somebody went from
So if
a
a
manager
manager,
to CHD, so museum rather than like, is that what you mean?
no, if the manager's off on maternity leave and someone takes a comment in that manager's position, you might have it. So
Yeah,
we used to call
maybe
those acting assignments, but you might have captured it further down. But I just wondered why the acting assignment was so specific that it was outside, acting outside of the library.
That's right, all acting assignment.
Yeah, you might have it down there.
I think it is, oh, I think it's in here. Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, I think you have it covered. Can you go back up to where I made the comment? Where was I? So here,
Your point was more about external and internal.
right, you just made that acting assignment outside of temporary leadership and higher pay where employees, I think. And then just go down further, so.
Oh. That was a comment, not acting assignment. Your comment.
Yeah, I think you've got it covered, Jen. I think you have it covered.
Yeah.
And then just again, specifying that it's the town.
Good call.
And then, and you're talking about, the increases, is it the CEO that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so just clarify that in there, because in other spots you have identified the CEO's responsibility, but you didn't there.
Yeah, it is. I have to find, I'll put the policy number in. And. Oops. I can't remember if it's listed up here, but it should be. I think that's one of ours, but yeah, okay. What else was there? Although. When a position is evaluated, I just want to make sure this is my authority. And the conclusion is that an employee's compensation exceeds the job rate.
Can you say that the Blue Mountain Public Library will consider, it's not the library, who is it that's within the library staff that's considering it?
Now, does the CEO have the authorization or is that board authorization? When it exceeds?
But it's not the library itself doing it.
No, and I think it would depend on, like if there was an impact on the budget, I would have to come to the board, but if we had the budget. Actually, maybe it would be board, because that could have impact. Let me just quickly do this.
But most staffing pays would be the CEO
Hmm.
unless it's CEO.
Yeah, and actually that's covered well in there.
I know.
The top part is covered. Yeah.
So staffing, yeah.
My comment was, it's just the BMPL can't do anything as a physical building.
Yeah.
If it's a budget issue, then we would look at the budget and decide how the budget needs to be, but it's still your decision as to pay.
And I think it should be your decision.
Okay. Yeah, here.
Right, so that's the situation where they're on a secondment and they've been heard. So I would say that the Blue Mountain Public Library has no responsibility here.
Although this says the employee isn't still an employee of the MPL for workplace safety.
But so they've been, so the way I interpret it is they've been seconded offsite to another agency. Then they've been hurt. So for workers' compensation, they're still considered from the library. Is that,
I agree, it doesn't make sense to me that it should be like, but how do we know what the law is around
Yeah.
that?
yeah, I don't
If
know.
they're entered off-site, they should be, the entry should be reported to us. Right?
But if they're,
But they're,
What's about one of our staff members, say one of our staff members has been, oh, with the assumption that our staff member has been seconded to the town.
yeah,
Therefore, the injury gets reported to the town.
but that's not the way that reads.
So the first part of the sentence is important, and I don't know how to answer, but does the employee continue to be an employee of BNPL, or do they become an employee of the seconded organization?
Usually they're from the perspective of WSIB or Occupational Health and Safety Act, they're an employee of the organization that they're seconded to. So if they were doing something for the town, let's say they were cutting trees and they fell out of the tree and hurt themselves, the library has no responsibility for
No.
that whatsoever. So that's why I found this to be a little confusing. Would not the WSIB claim then be through the town, because it was the town that was responsible for the injury? Or let's just take something like they take a leave, I don't know, working on construction, like, I just found that sentence to be a little bit confusing, and it almost implies that the library still has some responsibility. So I don't know if you want to check that.
You ever run it by,
It says.
Geronimo?
For you.
no.
She's our labor
Oh,
lawyer.
Stephanie,
Stephanie,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
No, not that Geronimo. Not the historical Geronimo, Stephanie Geronimo. Have you?
Yeah, I mean, it must come
good
from
call out.
somewhere.
Yeah.
She
but I
could
just
probably
found it
clarify this stuff
confusing.
too.
Yeah,
I'm confused. I can't explain it.
Yeah, so if you want to just follow that up. Because I would say in that case, the library doesn't have any liability whatsoever.
Do you want to leave this with me or you want the policy to come back?
I wouldn't mind seeing what the answer is, yeah. Or what the revised wording is, or.
So if that's the company, then they don't have a short-term disability plan or something, they may not get anything.
They may not.
I'd say run it by the labor lawyer.
Yeah,
She'd be the, Stephanie Geronimo's one of the leaders in the country for that stuff, so.
I just don't want the library picking up any liability for something that
No.
happened while they've been seconded somewhere else. And then the WSIB claim then would be put against the library, not against the company. And you don't want a WSIB claim
No.
put against you.
Okay.
Table that.
And that's it.
all right.
And then the very last one, the last policy,
Is the new.
or there's.
That is a separate item though, so the recommended motion will just need to be revised to remove, what do I have? I think I have them listed.
Yeah. It's gonna say, that this board approve the following policies, except salary administration.
I'll move that.
Well, I can just,
Because of the WSIB question,
Yeah,
that's the one.
yeah.
do you want that in the motion or I'll just remove from the motion salary administration and make a note in the minutes that it'll come back?
Yeah, do that.
I don't have to read the whole thing, so that this board approves following policies as presented or amended. Policy entitled general, entitled commitment to health and safety, fire safety and emergency preparedness, work alone, and respectful workplaces. John has moved this. Seconded. All in favor? Carried.
Alright. So. Okay. Here we are. Okay, so I'll do, just looking at the time, I'll do my best. I will say that a lot of research went into this policy, even though, as I explained in the staff report, the Toronto Public Libraries policy did provide a really solid foundation. And I think for many other libraries, that's really one of the only comprehensive policies that we have to reference right now. The Ontario Library Service is working on a Trillium policy, which is, that's sort of their brand for all of their sample policies they put out for public libraries. We're really far ahead of the game. I have seen a few AI policies from smaller libraries across Ontario, not many, and they're not as comprehensive as what I'm proposing. But essentially, I think the messaging in this policy is really that we're not telling staff that they can't use these tools, but we're putting a framework in place for helping them evaluate whether or not they should be using them, what they're putting into the tools. There is a section on providing the CEO with authority to approve or not approve specific tools. So one of the other documents I reference in the staff report is there, because my big thing was, do I want to be given that responsibility? Do I have the knowledge to really effectively evaluate these tools? And the federal government has put out some guidelines that are incredibly helpful. These guidelines to, I believe it was Kingston with the robot, Councillor McKinley had commented on.
Oh, yeah.
This document, this roadmap is very helpful in helping me establish procedurally sort of the criteria that I'll use to down the road have to evaluate tools. I don't think we're really in a position right now where I'm going to have an overwhelming amount of requests from staff on tools for approval. But I do have a couple of tools that I know people are already using that I think are common tools to use in the workplace. It's just a matter of having sort of the guidelines set out in the policy so that they know what they need to consider before they're relying on tools. So, you know, you're not putting in any personal information whatsoever into any AI tool. You're really supposed to use sort of these faster principles to justify use, especially if it's this is in the policy, but if it's a task that you can complete in an efficient manner on your own, you shouldn't be relying on AI to do it. And there's, you know, a lot of different reasons why, but I think when we're rolling out this policy, a big thing that I will say to staff is consider the environmental impact. Do you need AI to write your social media posts for you? Think about the resources that are being used to keep these servers going. Maybe even skills that you could use if you become too reliant on AI. You know, if there's a large amount of a specific output, so if it's a staff report and, you know, 85% of your staff report is generated using AI, you should be acknowledging and citing AI in the same way you would cite other resources. What makes our policy different from any other policy I've read so far is the gallery component. So I did bring this policy to the Arts and Culture Council before the policy was written. We had a discussion that informed the draft, and then they reviewed the draft and they were comfortable with sort of the wording and what was proposed in the policy, which is essentially, we're not saying absolutely not. We're not accepting AI generated artwork, but what we are saying is, in the same way we're setting this expectation for staff, you need to be citing your creative process to help us evaluate whether or not we want to accept that artwork in our gallery. You need to be citing the tools that you're using, that sort of thing. The ACC was a little bit divided. And I think it's the same, maybe even across the library and information profession, but you know, you have some people who really just say, absolutely not, we want nothing to do with these tools. My recommendation is not to take that approach. I think it's already largely a part of like the workforce, but also I see our role as educators to also educate the public on, you know, ethical use. And if we have standards for how staff are using them, then it'll be a lot easier to sort of inform the public on the ethics around using AI tools. And like anything else too, the more you use something, the more you learn about it. And then that can also inform future training and programming as well. So I do believe that that's built into the policy quite clearly. And then there is a section about continual learning and review. There's not a ton of, like, we're waiting for legislation to catch up. So I definitely see that as my responsibility to really be monitoring the legislation, but also any other professional conversations that are happening within the library and information community. An ongoing training for staff. We have had, you know, presentations at staff meetings. We've done outreach to other organizations. So it really is ongoing and we're already participating in that discussion. So I wouldn't say that we're by any means behind in terms of being up to date with ethical use of AI and all of that. The only other thing I think I'll highlight is, in addition to, I did mention sort of environmental sustainability, but the policy does acknowledge the discrimination and bias that exists in algorithms, and really encourages staff to think about how that informs how they're using the tool, but also the decisions they make about other people's well-being. So if I'm thinking like policy or, you know, you're crafting an email in response to a complaint. I don't know. I think there could be a lot of different examples where we just really need to keep that in mind, or even if we're doing any sort of research using an AI tool for summarizing data, being aware of the discrimination and bias in algorithms is very important.
Not eliminating critical thinking.
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
Requires more. So do you have the ones where we had comments?
Yes. I think this one, yeah. There.
We need to have a definition of that in the policy.
Yeah, I could just spell it out. Whoever did that, thank you.
Oh, I'm cracking on in there.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Like you, I saw the other things that this one I'm not letting pass.
Me, it's acronyms. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
Decisions impacting people's lives should not be fully automated and should always be made by humans.
So that was the thing you said here. No AI generated product shall be used to publish without oversight from a BNPL staff member. Well, I just wanted clarification of who that's that, and would it be their manager, is it?
Yeah, I thought
Is
it
it-
should be manager.
I think that's fair. Although, let me just read the first bit.
Yeah.
I've looked at this way too many times. Staff are responsible for accuracy, content. Yeah, yes, okay.
Okay.
Now I'm debating whether manager should be capitalized.
Well, we'll go through these comments or.
Yeah, I didn't know who you meant by public here. To ensure responsible use, the organization will provide ongoing training and resources to staff and the public.
Yeah, library users.
But is that our responsibility to train library users?
I think so.
Need to inform them at least, right?
Maybe, well, maybe that's more of like a programming. Well,
Like the Wired Wednesdays, incorporating it in that, I mean.
I just, I'm trying to think, this may have also been in TPL's policy. That's a good question though, but if libraries aren't educating the public, who else is going to do it?
Well, I think
But the policy.
my
isn't for
question around
public.
this was, is this policy for staff? And
Yes,
If
Yeah.
it is for staff.
it is.
Then I think reference to either we're mandating that the staff oversee public use, or we're taking any reference to public out of this.
Yeah, I
It's all
think
about
because
staff
this is
use.
a staff policy, I think you can say that as a mission statement for the library outside of the policy.
Yeah, no, that's a good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. Yeah, that works. That was it. The library.
Were there
Um,
any other comments?
I had another. I know it's mentioned somewhere, but I'm thinking in the accountability and transparency, I don't know if we need to say that CEO has discretion to, deny use or halt use or determine
No?
appropriate use. I don't know.
At this, I know,
At this point.
I was grappling with even having that responsibility,
Okay,
but, I did see that in multiple policies, so I think that's why I threw it in there.
yeah, so I think it's important. I think it's important, and I might have missed it where it is that you have discretion to essentially tell someone they have to stop using it. Because if they are, and it might be inferred when this is how you're allowed to use it, and if you're not, it's your responsibility. You can say, sorry, but we're gonna shut up your access to all the tools. How do you do that? But, that's, I just wanna make sure it's clear in there.
Yeah, and, I mean, it's gonna be hard for me to, like, I have a process and there were some resources, that I referenced. For, even like a form where staff, if there's a tool that hasn't been approved or something that's new that's coming out, they submit the tool through this form and then it gives. Me some time to evaluate whether or not we should be using it.
Yeah.
But something like my plan was, should this policy be approved by the board, I have to be prepared when I send it out to staff with all of those resources and a list of here's what we can use. So I've already started to do that.
I think this is awesome. What I was gonna suggest, because it's mentioned in here, but the sentence you have in the, I guess the note, your report, that staff are encouraged to use AI only when it offers clear, measurable value and not as a default for tasks. That language, I think is very clear, and I would love to see it in the policy. Whether it's in the purpose and scope, or sorry, the use of tools, or. Where did
I
just
think
see
it is in here.
You have bias, equity, and sustainability. So you say personnel should be mindful of environmental risks. I don't know, I really like that sentence. It's very clear. And because when you're saying provide, it's substantial value is in an even more subjective term.
Oh,
So you're number one, oh, sorry, where is it that I've missed it?
it's in the very first, number one in bias, equity and sustainability.
Yeah, but to me.
Yeah.
When they provide, to me. I feel that's even more subjective, and I liked this. Like clear measurable value, again,
Okay,
I just like the wording of that, if you want to add it in. It says similar things, but I feel
you like the language.
the
in
language
stuff.
is more, I can understand that better than, oh, well, I know.
Which section is that
Sorry,
in? The
it is just before E references on your note. Oh yeah, keep going, note. The
Oh,
last
yeah.
sentence right there, staff are encouraged, that very last sentence, yeah.
But there's no reference to that, yeah.
Did you find a hole in the policy?
Copy from another policy.
Mhm.
They're both good. You can
Oh,
have
wait.
both in there if you like.
Oh, I didn't mean to, I didn't mean to pop it there. I didn't mean to do that. I know, I just remembered that.
Goes in the bias,
Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
But now I'm thinking, is that really the section where it should be, or it should be actually put?
It's part of use, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe it's becomes number 2 instead of, yeah. Yeah, yeah, and your tools.
although number 1 and,
Oh, yeah. So maybe it goes after number 6. What's 6 now? Or was 6? Where am I? Personnel must not rely on it for decisions.
maybe before that. Oh, but now I'm thinking maybe it should go at the very top before this. I'm gonna stick it there first.
I think that works, and then you get into the tools.
What did you
And other
find?
comments going to be found.
Other small things, about under definitions, section 2. Under definitions,
Up at the very top.
new top. Yeah, so stop there. See, there's, artificial intelligence, AI. Yeah, that paragraph, decision making, and there's a, superscript.
Oh, yeah, the footnote.
Yeah, so there's no footnote, so I think probably that should be deleted.
There was,
Oh, yeah, I don't know why.
it was, yeah,
There
Notre
was-
Dame Learning AI overview and definitions.
Oh,
I don't know why it's not.
It's
Oh.
not, oh,
Oh, okay.
it showed up in my printed version.
The formatting is weird in
Okay.
SharePoint.
Well, I was, yeah, okay, that's fine. Just stop. Go on there.
Any other questions, thoughts, comments?
No, I think it's good, great.
Yeah, I'm happy that we have. it.
Yeah, I thought it was really good.
Great.
Oh, I'm so relieved to have it done.
Yeah, no, it's really good.
That's good.
So we can definitely put a green on our action plan. for this
Yay,
one.
okay. So, recommended motion that this board approve POL SYS 2025.01 entitled Artificial Intelligence Policy as presented and amended.
Move to approve.
Okay, we've got Marie moved. Chris. Second, all in favor? Carried. Great.
Okay.
Okay, we have 4 minutes. Is everybody okay to stay a little longer?
I can't stay past 4. I have a meeting in
Okay.
Midland at 6 o'clock, so I'm kind of. Yeah,
Long day for you.
Okay, is everyone else okay?
Yeah, a little bit longer.
A little bit
Teacher
longer.
at 5.
Okay.
so this might be the appropriate moment maybe to say
Yeah.
good rest of the day to
Okay.
everybody. Sorry,
Thank you.
but almost there. But
Thank you, we're very close.
yes, all good. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Good to see you. See you later.
Um,
Gotta make note.
Yeah.
Okay. Fundraising and donation plan. Sorry, here. Yeah.
Just to provide some context for this, just for the fundraising piece here, because the intent in getting the charitable status was to enable us to apply for grants from foundations that's separate from TBM. So we had to have our own business number to do that. So that was the main point of getting charitable status for fundraising purposes. Was not meant to be general sort of fundraising approach. Which is highlighting more. And the other thing we got in one of the strat plans, couldn't find the wording on these, but we got pretty clear feedback that there's only one payer. And the library should not be competing with other organizations that have to fundraise in order to survive, where we actually have taxpayer funds that come to us. So that's just sort of a couple pieces of context before we get too far into fundraising.
This report too, at the last meeting, I think it was in the CEO report. The manager of community engagement had attended a bunch of webinars on fundraising, so I think some of the learning outcomes are outlined in more detail in here. But we didn't talk about the context that you just provided.
But yeah, that said, if you go down to some of the particular objectives, not
Like the suggestion.
suggested fundraising initiatives, adopt an artifact. That is not going to be funded by our operating budget generally anyway. So I don't have any issues with that kind of thing. Annual fundraising events, just the fact that my experience with fundraising events, they're really about awareness raising. They usually don't actually raise money. They're expensive, but they may develop your interest in your donors. But they would definitely be in the whole 35%, then you really want to pay attention to that, because usually they're pretty expensive without a lot of actual return. But some of the things listed here, like this teen space refresh, graphic wall, some of the programming, those are all things that you might want to do some fundraising for. Maybe not programming unit tend to fall under user fees. You're trying to get money in it.
Yeah, and the one caution I always had with programming too is we want it to be part of our operating budget. We want to plan effectively. Like it's a core service. If that makes.
And a lot of places that do this on a full-time basis, they hire people for it.
Well, this,
So this is really putting us into another ballpark.
well, so in the next steps, this annual campaign plan and 3-year long-range donor service capital and operational plan, that's actually part of the manager of community engagement's job description.
I was under the impression that also part of it, not the whole thing, like besides the grant, but that, for example, if some philanthropic person in the community wanted to say donate a grand piano, for example, that they get a tax receipt.
That's exactly what happened with the piano here.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of the focus. I didn't realize that we were in the business of raising money.
Yeah, I think for this, if I'm thinking back to the meeting, I think, yes, it was spurred by a couple of things. Was Mary had attended these sessions of learning, and as part of her role, as the manager's role, to develop a campaign plan, a 3-year long service, but more to our initiatives of applying for a minimum of one new funding source or grant. And ultimately the long term, once we do get charitable status, so understanding, what are we going to do? How are we going to approach that? I think it was the opportunity, because we do need to think about, as we do fundraising, we are going to need fundraising. Is it one-time specific, and there's some good thinking in here to, like, how do you develop your approach to fundraising? I think this was sort of kicking off that thinking and to help direct. So if we're going to go for, we had just said apply for a minimum of one new funding source. We haven't said why. We haven't identified what it is we're trying to fund, which is probably a problem in our plan. But that's where this came from in terms of, well, let's have her pull together a plan based on what she's just learned, so that we have that immediate thinking, and almost like it helps to kick off the thinking of additional revenue generation through funding.
So is the focus more so on government grants and maybe approaching businesses to sponsor something versus individuals?
And I think that's that's where we need to get to, is a recommendation that says, you know, yes, our community has been very clear. We pay for the library through our taxes. We don't feel that we should be supporting other initiatives. Unless, you know, or there is a big one, but, at this point, I think this was a good report. And in fairness, I think we would need to provide more guidance in terms of what we would look for in a plan. But I do think it is important that we've thought through, are we, you know, where's our priority? Is it every year we should be looking to corporations? We should, you know, we do have, you know, people can donate money. What are we saying? You know, every year we should identify what we're raising that extra money for. Just those kind of criteria. So I don't.
Unless we have a real capital drive or something special, I wouldn't want us to put a lot of focus on this. Because people get burned out and there's such a competitive field. I mean, there's so many other charitable organizations, even in our own community, that are looking for dollars. And you're right, most people's perspective would be I'm paying for it in taxes, you asking me for something else. So unless there's a very specific target, then I don't like it being ambiguous.
But even that, I don't think we have. So and maybe the wrong terminology is the plan. Maybe it's more of a strategy or around, because we are collecting donations. And what I don't believe we have is a policy, a strategy, a direction around how we use that money.
Policy,
Yeah.
but I do have a problem with the plan.
With creating a plan
And-
to actively go out and.
And you're never gonna
Yeah.
stop people from donating, but they're not donating $1 million.
Right.
So we're not talking big dollars here
Right.
at this time anyways.
Yeah.
So you're more concerned with the appearance of us going out and raising funds for something that's publicly funded through taxes?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can
That
see,
isn't a large thing.
yeah, I can see that.
I can see it in the context of a building project,
Yes.
Yeah,
that would definitely be.
Either for equipment or for the building itself.
Yeah.
That's a very specific purpose. And I went through this with BVO when we were doing for a capital drive too.
Right.
It was hard, really hard.
So I would say this is similar to like hospitals doing charity drives, because they're funded, they have a
Mhm.
funding formula, but like you go.
But then they're usually going for, we're getting a new MRI.
Yes,
CAT scan
Yeah.
or something, so it's very clear what the money's going for,
yeah,
or at least that's what they're saying it's going for.
so I bet you Julia's got a lot of experience on the hospital side of things.
Yeah, definitely.
Like Northville Hospital has a charity golf tournament all the time, and it was when they were initially building
Well, a
it.
lot of hospitals have foundations, and that's where the money goes through. It's not to the hospital directly, it's through the
Okay.
foundations.
Like, I don't know anything about hospital funding,
Well, I worked there too, but
yeah.
And that's a foundation that has charitable status.
yes.
Oh, okay.
Library.
Okay, I see.
Okay.
But I know, thinking about the charitable status, it's really about being able to apply for these foundation grants that we currently are ineligible for. Because we didn't have a separate business number. And then we would have to but it was to run our normal fundraising, like people just make a donation, the town write the charitable receipt, difficult, because a connection to them. And that's where that grand piano came from, a friend of mine. Yeah, that already can happen, yes. But I would say, we have a better idea of what we're trying to do with this building, and sort of the directions we're going to. And let's say, we're deciding we're definitely going to create a teen space or something, or we need to do shelving for but I could see looking for some support in some of those areas.
Well, and we do have small grants that we go for, so
It's not about grants. This is not about grants, this is about.
no, this is going out with your hand out. I know, it's a job I hate, but anyway.
Yeah, we definitely need to be going for the grants and the foundation stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't go to the community at this stage.
So was this presented to us for your information, or were we approving this, or?
yeah, no, just as information.
Okay,
But I think based on the discussion, like there is a recommendation in this report. Not necessarily for board direction, but I can provide direction to the manager not to move forward with
Well, once we get this
this until we have,
consultant
yeah.
report, that might
Yeah,
trigger something.
yeah, maybe just put it on pause until.
I think it was really useful though. I think,
But I
appreciate the
think what
information.
we've all talked about is what we need is a framework
Yeah.
to be able to handle it.
Yeah.
But to go with your hands out, I would like to see a specific target.
Okay. All right, so.
Ultimately, though, we have the status is a policy that states, when are we using our number
Yeah,
to apply for the versus, and when do we write a receipt versus when the town can continue to write for it.
Balance.
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, that would be good.
it would we even, yeah, I won't go there right now.
Okay, so it's been received. We don't need to do a motion. Okay. Marie, you have to jump? Okay, no, that's fair. We have two items left. Okay, yeah.
Have some dinner.
Take care, Marie.
See you tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I'm done for the week.
Thanks, Marie.
I'm just gonna make my hair. Do we still have quorum?
Yes. That's three, there's still four of us here.
Um, I don't have anyone doing minutes today, so thank you.
Okay, so strategic planning process and options.
So I've started a report that I'll bring to the board in June. That was the direction I was given at the last meeting, outlining the planning process and various options for the board to consider.
I think that's it. You thought you was.
I know, now I'm thinking though, I feel like I had a question for
The
the board just in
question-
terms of clarity for, oh my gosh, isn't that horrible?
Wasn't the discussion around whether we're gonna do a massive consultation like the 4-year plan? And we
Yes.
decided that maybe we didn't need to, we could just build on the 4-year plan that we have and have
Yeah.
to move forward under that framework rather than
Yeah.
ditching the whole thing and start again.
Yes, and I think, well, even, okay, now that we're talking this through, I think that is where I'm going with the current report.
Cause I think we were all in agreement, we didn't want to throw away all that good work. And that we really don't need to
Repeat it.
repeat it and do a massive stakeholder consultation.
So it'll be, and some of the options too that I'm putting in there are like the time frame for the strat plan. Do we want to do a 2-year plan? Here are the benefits, here are the whatever, and outlining all those things like I have it in a chart. We want to do a 2-year plan, stick to a 4-year cycle. Do you want to do one that doesn't have a timeline that is maybe revisited? Those are the options that I'm sort of laying out. At this stage, do you think it makes sense to include an example of a library that falls into all of the suggestions? So one that has a 2-year plan, or is that too much information?
I don't think we need it. I think,
Okay.
I think well, you had mentioned Innisfil, I think it was, doesn't have a timeline on it. That might just help, but. Yeah,
So if you're coming forward with a recommendation on your options, maybe have an example of a library that does what you're recommending.
Aligning with my
Yeah,
recommendation.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that at least helps
Do you have
clarify.
any discussion about whether you want like a general plan for everything you do? Or a plan that really talks about points of change?
I feel like naturally that's coming out in what I've been
Mhm.
writing. So I'll include,
What do you mean by points of change?
that would frame the consultation part.
Business as usual,
Mhm.
we're gonna continue programming, we're gonna have collections, we're gonna do this, and this. But we want to build a building, there's a point of change,
Oh, okay, okay.
right? So we want to
Yeah.
talk about a plan that deals with everything. Or you want to just point at what are the points of
Things, yeah.
the
My preference is the plans of change.
And that's what
Yeah.
an actual strat plan is. You're not gonna do your strat planning here.
Well, you have a work plan versus a strat plan.
We've got work plans most
Yeah.
of the past, yes.
And I think that's what we were saying is even the focus, the way we've looked at the plan itself is contextual. So what's our current context? And that's really what we're focused on to that point, some points of change. Yeah. Cool. So that's
I
coming in
think I
June.
have what I need. Yes.
Were we, let's see, we've got, finance committee appointments. Were we not going to do something about our actual performance measures on our current plan?
We are, so Jennifer and I need to meet to do that. So we will, it's not on here, but our goal is to have it to you for June.
Okay.
Yes, sorry.
I think we're
Yes.
meeting next week, are we?
We're meeting next week. Yeah.
June's gonna be good.
Yes, the board will receive the audited financial statements in June as well.
Finance committee appointments, we're really not talking about a standing committee, are we?
Meaning, is it ad hoc?
Yes.
Yes.
To reword that?
I think so.
Standing means it goes forever.
There are standard, there's a template for terms of reference. I don't know if you've encountered those, Jen. So they were all committee terms of reference, which this all, purpose and authorities, all that kind of stuff. There's a template somewhere in our stuff,
Okay.
so you want to look at.
Uh,
I think the town has it too.
okay.
They probably do, we have our own that we developed.
Okay. Come on.
No, because we don't have any committees. Right, we haven't had any committees, but now we're starting to do this and we do a template, make sure we're covering things that's
Okay.
supposed to be covered.
And in the past meeting, okay, so we'll just ask again, if anyone would like to be part of the meeting. The past meeting, it was Julie and I put our hands up, if anyone
Or
else.
finance, are we talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
And once again, this is the last meeting, my apologies. So the context for this,
Is to develop as we said in our plan, is the multi-year financial projections and plan for reserves.
how to use the reserves, we're looking. Because we have a whole list of different types of reserves, right?
Mhm.
Thinking about what their intent is and how you might use them.
Yeah, so part of what we talked about is just understanding sort of what are they, where are they sitting exactly, what are the terms against each of them? And then,
The controls.
so that is part of the, so, well, we only had two members, if anyone else would like to join. Two person, yeah. Or just be
Finance
more,
is not my forte.
okay. Okay, Laura, you look like you're sitting on the fence.
It is an interest of mine, but what you described, it mostly sounds like it's an internal, like a CEO job, not a board.
It, except that from the long term, and this is what we were trying to sort through as well, is just from, well, obviously, the CEO is part of it, so we should make sure that's clear. Sorry, Vince, CEO, is that I think where it all stems from is just being really clear on on what our budget is, where the numbers are, and if we are looking at right now, because we're only looking 1 year at a time, and it comes back also to the
We've also
strategic
done
plan.
multi-year, the CEO has done multi-year.
Yes, it has done multi-year.
Especially with staffing.
Yeah, so the committee, so the reason why we want to do it as a committee, so it could be that we're directing the CEO, but the committee will meet and see and review and go, okay, now this all makes sense to us, or it doesn't. I'm just thinking.
But it was more from the perspective
Yeah.
of, right now, our strategy is to use the surplus for the salaries. And
That was part of the question.
And that was sort of that starting the whole discussion,
That was the
was,
right thing
why
to
is
do.
our financial strategy to use our surplus to cover a cost we know that we're gonna have over the next couple of years, maybe we need a longer term strategy. on
Yeah.
finance.
Well, and the surplus is currently funding actually our capital budget.
Which capital,
our capital budget.
the minor capital budget,
No,
so. Talk about that a bit more, I'm not following.
so I mean, I guess like if you look at the budget as a whole, the 6%. I guess covered our operational expenses, but then we used the surplus reserve to top up the budget, which ended up essentially covering the capital budget.
Maybe you want to start here?
I think, which is why, so
I think
why,
it was more these odd pots of money that nobody was too clear.
yeah, and I feel that as the board, as we are responsible for saying yea or nay to the recommendations of the CEO, having a better picture and as a board, looking through what are those future projections as well. So we, we are all aware of, yeah, these pots of money, and yes, they have been held for this, and yes, we're, that's a 5-year out. Development charges are gonna come in, we know, so the work, we will definitely need done to do the work, but I think to make sure we're all, as the board, to enable us to make those decisions. And, when we're looking at the budget every year, we have that understanding of where the pieces are coming from. Maybe that defines better.
No, I think that's all. Jen's work, I think, comes back to the board as a whole to understand, I just don't see why you get committed.
So when
Yeah.
Dan came to the board with the last budget, and then you made the comment that the next 3-year strategy or whatever the time frame was to cover the increase in salary costs because of the review, you were gonna use the surplus. And then that started the whole discussion on why is our strategy to use the surplus?
Is that the surplus we got from the town for salaries? It is a salary
I don't
surplus.
think you were here for that discussion.
Yes, well, there was that surplus, and then there's another, and then there were 2 other buckets that we weren't quite sure. And I think the reason for the committee is, I think to help move this along, and to be honest, to have more conversation back and forth about how we set it up, how Jen sets it up, and how we look at it, et cetera. Not to preclude the board from ultimately viewing and saying, here's where, this is what it looks like. If what you're feeling is that we should all be part of that conversation, I think then we should probably look at an entire, like a longer meeting, or identifying one of our board meetings for that sole topic.
I think
That's, I guess, that's where we're struggling with how to
Yeah,
approach it.
yeah.
Yeah.
there's like, so there's that the whole list of various reserves, and it's town monitor, it's this or it's that. And there should be terms of reference for each of those.
Mhm.
And I think they have either been lost in the midst of time, or there are things that have been held by the town. And
Yeah.
I think that's a research project that you have to undertake with Monica, I guess. Or somebody that
Mike, yeah,
can go back and find when and how these were established and what their purpose is.
we
So
have,
that's still out.
yeah, there's one reserve, and in the Q reports that come to the board, it cites a bylaw. And that's the only bylaw I've been able to find that governs reserves, but I know, and that particular bylaw, it's for, I think, I can't remember if it was the legacy reserve, but anything that's in it has to be used for Ellie Shore. But that number hasn't changed in many, many years.
That's the residual from the fundraising for this building in
Yeah.
95.
Right. But anyway, council has also given town staff direction to basically do the exact same thing. So we're gonna do it all at the same time. Like, I think the finance department is working on a policy to govern reserves, and like at what point is your reserve being depleted and you can't keep like stuff like that. I think will also be helpful in revisiting all these things. But yeah.
But I agree, I don't know that we need a finance committee.
No, I think there's a lot of background information that needs to be gathered.
Mhm.
And then it comes to the board as a whole to understand. And that's also one of the reasons we got the 6%. And that was so we could do 2 and 3 year plans
Projections.
Mhm.
and figure out what, because, you used to have to go to council if you wanted to replace the shelving unit. It was like odd things like that. So now we have much more. But we do need to know what all these reserves
Mhm.
meet with, what their purpose is, because now it's this kind of like confusing list.
And that was what the conversation was at the last meeting. Nobody would, I shouldn't say nobody, but there was a lack of clarity on, what each of these pots were. And also, I think underneath it, a worry we might lose some of these pots from, that was
Yeah.
part of the theme.
Yeah,
Well, I
Yeah.
think that that's the funding agreement, so it protects us in that sense, but we do need to understand, because some of them are in control of town and not us, even though they are for the
Yeah,
library.
you're right.
So there is a
So-
lot of information missing, but I do think it needs to come back within the context of what are the things that we as a board want to accomplish, and do we have access to these funds? And the fact that our first obligation is to cover the salary of the next 3 years. That's what some of that money came forward to specifically.
I
That's
just
part of
wanna
the-
double check too,
Six
that this
fifty-five.
isn't in the action plan, cause something.
no, this is
It
in
is.
the action plan. This
It
is
is in the
exactly,
action
yeah,
plan.
so this is what we'd agreed, that we would develop a multi-year financial projections and a plan of reserves. And this was about setting up a working group to establish, we said, the approach, resources needed, timeline. So if we needed to,
Yeah, there it is.
if we needed to pull in, I mean, we have an investment, how are we dealing with our investments? How are we, there's, the question also of, so, I just recently, there was discussion about the town doing a, what do you call it? Zero
Base
budget, base budgeting. I'm not saying we should, but I think it's more, if we are going to be aligned with the town, is that something we need to do? What's our position on that? How are we looking at the budget? Because there are many things, and how are we deciding? I think it just comes down to, are we all understanding? Or all, comfortable, I guess, we're making decisions on the budget. So if it, and I hear exactly what you're saying. I mean, I think we should all have the same level of information. I don't know that it should be an open board meeting, I guess. Because I feel like we're gonna have these conversations, oh, well, what does that mean? And what does this mean? And where does this sit? I don't know. I'm just throwing that there. That's why I'm just more thinking, what's the best structure?
There wouldn't be a need to have a closed session, wouldn't be ability to have a closed session for that sort of thing,
Yeah.
under our restrictions.
So I think our thinking was having a working group to kind of hash through some of it and get clarity, because if we do have the questions from the last couple of meetings and even this one about where we're not clear, and then bring that for conversation.
Can I
Clarity.
suggest, the starting point is for you to do a research and try and find out what we know about those grants, those various reserves and things, and bring that to a board meeting and decide whether that clarifies enough that now we know we use these for that. Yeah. And then if we want to do a working group at that point, say, now we have this project, we're trying to do this,
Well,
such
essentially,
question, it's probably planning and funding this spatialization study,
yeah,
right? And we pick the.
because we're looking
Actually,
to start with for money for that, so.
Mhm. So we need to know what we can use the reserves for. And I would be my suggestion is to bring back the whole board. And then be maybe in the context of how we're funding our spatialization study, and then how does that relate to a 3-year budget, which you'll be developing over the summer, I guess. Well, the next 3-year budget.
And that might lead to having a working
Having a
group.
work, I see where you're coming from. Yep.
Yeah, so this,
Yeah, well, that's fair.
I will not have that done by June.
Yeah.
Well, there's being a detective, right, in terms of where the history for some of the.
Yeah, well, and a lot of it too, especially when it comes to our reserves, it's not like I can easily access. Like I will need help with from town staff.
Mhm.
I don't know where you would even look for the history on some of that.
I mean, I can go through minutes too, and yeah, talk to Sabrina.
because she did a lot of research trying to pin that stuff down.
Oh, okay.
And clerks, I guess, but I imagine they went through that to find that one bylaw. Okay.
Okay, so, then we are not going to do the motion. We have the meeting notes on you prepared for, let me say July.
I think that's fair, yeah, and the goal on the action plans to try and have this, done by Q3.
Mhm.
That's for July.
That's what you want to use that word. It's, I mean, all of these things working in parallel work up to the work that we do need, we know we are open to do, so. Sure, okay. Then, CEO report.
All right, I'm just gonna share my screen again. Looking through, is there anything? Oh, I went to both of these events, actually. It was a really exciting month, in the gallery. Beverly Smith, the chair of the ACC. She hasn't had a show in, I think, 6 years. She also did the artwork in the Story Tower. She had a show in the gallery, very well attended. It was one of our first interactive exhibits. So there was a scribble wall. The kids absolutely loved it. And believe it or not, we didn't get anything inappropriate on the scribble wall. Bev also did a second event, which talked about her artist in residence trip in Tuscany, and that's where she started to create some of the pieces that were featured in the exhibit. And again, very well attended event. I think, did we also have, yes, we also did a music event too with a cellist, a pianist, and flutist, I think is the term.
Flutist.
Yes, flutist. We had, I think, over 90 people were there. It felt like there were more people there. There were people crying after the
Wow.
after the event. I just Mary lied is bawling her eyes out, but it was really well received. So the ACC is working with the cellist again to bring another music series in the fall. So that may be something that they'll be focusing on in 2026, just because of the popularity of the series. We're just sort of looking at grants and other opportunities to fund something like that, because it's not cheap, but it's very well received by the community.
Can I just comment that because of the Collingwood Music Festival, one that's been going on for, 3 or 4 years.
3 years, yeah.
And, they're doing a lot of work, one of their main projects this year is youth.
Yeah.
Development. And I'm wondering if there might be some opportunity to do some programming with the youth that are going through master classes and stuff, and give them exposure to, audiences.
That's a good suggestion. I'll bring that to an ACC meeting. I went with museum staff to the ROM as a staff development. I hadn't been to the ROM like 15 years, I think. And so they had a new fossil exhibit, and there were quite a few fossils as part of their exhibit that were from Craigleith. Which was really neat. And then there was an entire piece of the exhibit too, featuring something that one of the gentlemen that does the fossil cracking with us in the summer. So I think it was really nice for museum staff to see the people, not only the people they work with on display at the ROM, but artifacts from this area, which was really neat. I was more so walking around looking at, innovative ideas that maybe we could bring to our small community museum. But it was nice to spend a day with some of the staff I don't get to see every day too. But I think everyone felt left feeling inspired. And we do get a discount too through one of our memberships with, I can't remember, Ontario Museum something. So it was a very cost effective trip too. Oh, and I thought that was cute. Volunteer recognition.
Yeah, that's great.
So the IDEA committee, we did this truth and reconciliation, cultural mindfulness training hosted. So it was paid for by the IDEA committee, not the library, but it was hosted at the library. And then I sort of hosted the speaker, but it was neat because it did bring together all of the staff. We had representation from various departments and seniority levels. The acting CAO did attend the session as well, and it was really well received. But that was just another kind of partnership,
Mhm.
but also meaningful sort of staff development day for some of our library people. And then we did do the sustainability summit, and that's when we premiered Journey of Water. So definitely a completely different audience than the audience we receive when we premiere the events here. So we're still going to do a premiere of the film. We're doing it in July. But again, that was another good partnership. And then I moderated a panel session after the film with the film director, Heather McIntyre, who is an Indigenous wellness coach. We've partnered with her in the past, and she actually narrates the film and gives like a very Indigenous perspective on the relationship between us and the water, and how that, you know, our responsibility is taking care of the water, how it's part of our identity in the town of the Blue Mountains. So Heather was part of the panel session, and then Alessia, our museum curator, was as well, just to provide sort of that local history perspective. And then we were also selling stuff from the museum gift shop too. That's it.
Busy time.
Busy time.
I know, sometimes I have to look at it again, I'm like, what do we do?
Did a lot. Great,
Programming
good.
you do at this library is amazing.
It's so busy, and almost, actually, this is a good problem to have. Before we put out the last library newsletter, we had to rush to get it out because there were almost no spots left in every single program that we were advertising.
Wow. And we're tracking that. And we're definitely tracking the,
Good.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
there's,
It's a good problem, but it's a bad problem because people go elsewhere. And
yeah,
they think, oh, I'll never get in, right? It becomes a challenge, like, oh, I'd like to do something, but it's probably sold out, which is
Really
really
doesn't
sad.
even try.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we lose people, so we're on it. Okay, great stuff. Any other questions?
No, that's great.
All right, any other business?
You
Yeah.
wanted to talk about your
Yeah.
athletes?
Yes, yeah.
Craig Leaf Working Group.
Yeah, so I was very, I attended in the end of February, this is a Craig president, the, open house of the Craig Leaf Working Group held over in,
Yeah.
yeah, you guys
Yeah,
were there
yeah.
as well. And, so they, based on my address, because I am a president, the chair, Steve Ranger, reached out to me, later in the winter and invited me to attend a meeting. And we had a really good conversation, because I said, well, I said on the library board, and the library boards are very interested in developing service at that end. And they said, well, that's exactly what we want to hear. The kind of support and initiatives that Craig Leaf members, and the fact that I'm also on the library board, that was great. Really happy to hear that. And what kind of effort had we been making, and that's the sort of thing. So, we'd like to, we've now kind of gone through the whole road safety, trail development questions, and we want to engage more Craig Leaf members in what are the new things we should be looking into. And so I was invited with full knowledge that I'm on the library board. So I thought that was really good. And I did say to him that we also, at the library board side, we have an initiative about reaching out to Craig Leaf and working with you guys, and specifically mentioning the working group. So I'm not a member of the committee, but I'm invited as a guest, and I expect to hear again, next meeting's coming. I'll try to attend them once I can. There were quite a few people there. And from the town, we had, trying to remember who all was there, but we had the acting CAO was there for part of the meeting. Tim Hendry was the one who actually, was doing most reporting on behalf of the town. And I forget what his role is because.
Director of Strategic Initiatives.
Right, okay. And, so this is established as a town working group. We had, Alan was the TV operations guy.
Alan.
Alan, okay, it's hard to hear. Okay. And then there was, Bill, the secretary of the facilities and fleet. So they actually, that's pretty heavy duty town, attention.
Mhm.
And, so there was, I thought it was a really interesting discussion. Oh, and then, Ryan, community services director appeared for part of the meeting. There's also a lot of representation. There were some people from the Blue Mountain Village Association. There were people from Tyrolean Village, someone from Snowbridge, a couple from Windfall, and a few of us who aren't in sort of that kind of community, but are just in one of their zones. So that was really interesting. There was some discussion in the old fire hall. As you know, the fire moving to a new location. And so I had asked, had there been any possible consideration of the library being an occupant of the old fire hall? And this is actually a question that Steve Granger had asked me on the phone call ahead of time. And so I checked with Jen and I said, well, yeah, yes, because it's growth related, we could be involved with the DCs, because they did talk a bit about the DCs as well. And we do, as a library board, believe that we need to be developing service at that end. But we have not yet gotten a lot of traction with council on that, though to their credit, they invited our CEO to participate in the MRFA study. And so there was some discussion around MRFA, and not a lot, because everyone's just sort of waiting to see what happens next.
Yes.
But so I said, in terms of the old fire hall, Steve Granger had been talking about a situation in Aurora where, I guess where he lived, where there had been, I think it was an old hydro facility or valve facility, where when it was decommissioned, they turned it into some kind of community center. Whether that specifically involved the library or not, I wasn't clear. But he's so, are we interested in the old fire hall? And we said, well, we could be. I mean, we would have to have a better understanding.
But we had actually submitted that as an idea before Sabrina left.
That was for the new fire hall location.
To be part of that, yeah.
So now they're talking about the old fire hall. It's being
Okay.
used. The town has already made decisions on how it's being used. It's basically going to be for equipment in the area, like snow clearing and that kind of stuff. But it turned into a discussion where Ryan commented that, well, there's a whole corridor there that goes from the fire hall, and there's a path, and then it goes into I forget what the number is, but one of the parking areas, the one where you don't have to pay that's near the village. And he says, that's all town-owned land. And there's a longer term plan of development for that area. And, then we kind of got into the terms of MRFA or, other developments. And somebody on the library would be very much involved in those kinds of discussions. And anyway, so it's an opportunity, you said, for future development for community services. Anyway, so I thought it was all very interesting, very productive, a little bit of profile for the library at the meeting, and a group that we definitely want to stay in touch with. The other thing that I heard, you probably already know this, is that the budget will be tabled at council on October 14th, which is about 2 months earlier than last year. So one of the comments that Steve Granger, or I guess some of the meeting said that if you have requests for council that you want to show up into the next year's budget, that the staff will be working on it from May to July in order to hit the October timing.
Wow. So will you become an ongoing contributor?
I was clearly there as a guest,
Okay.
but it's also not clear to me if who's the actual committee.
Okay.
So I'm not even sure they have specific named members. Other than Steve Granger, obviously a major player, and there's a reference to another friend of mine, actually Pam Spence, who's on the committee. And then they kind of had some conversations with each other who seem to be people that are doing some work.
Yeah.
But they want to have another open house. I think in May that I will attend, and I said to Steve, I'd be interested in continuing to attend these meetings
Good for
if
you.
they're opening it for guests. Because that's fun. The other, I think, I don't care to see this, but this is the whole list of projects that they got the town to work on. And status of the projects. And, yeah, so
So they have clout.
well, and I think that's what someone said, I forget who said it, that they want to use the Craigleith Working Group as a main sounding board for projects in Craigleith.
Okay,
Is it okay? And we'll be there as much as possible.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, that's great.
Were there any members of council
No,
present?
there were at the open house in
Yeah.
Okay.
February, it was
Yeah.
actually
3 or 4.
June, for the go.
Yeah.
I think,
And then the
I think
deputy-
Alex Maxwell was there too.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think that was, I think those 3 that were there. And then, you know, Ryan, Director of Community Services showed up and, I guess. Tim Henry was there.
I was there as well.
No,
Yeah.
he was at the time. Maybe somebody else from the town, so they've got a lot of attention from the town staff.
Well, also, given they just announced about the new retirement or long-term care,
Yeah.
there, is that Craig? That is Craig.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Please, please.
So where the T's please,
Oh, tease, please, that's right.
was, you know, the golf course, yeah, so they just,
they're
it
putting
came
a
out,
circle there.
oh, there, it's
Traffic
going to
circle.
be well, they may still.
Oh, I thought they were doing a traffic circle there. as well.
There might still be, but part of it there, no, they've got a partner now, People Care, I think, and they're to build a long-term retirement home
Wow.
with 190.
Yeah, at first I thought it was 160, I think it was
Anyway.
196.
Yeah.
So in place of the one that was supposed to be here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so again, I'm sure that will come up, the town just announced it, but again, it makes sense. Now for the town, everybody's, you know, definitely that whole end is, you know, is growing and needs the attention, so. Great, thank you.
Well, just adds more ammunition for us having a service out in
Absolutely.
Yeah.
the end of town.
Table
Okay.
of key messages.
I think, yeah, let's just quickly do key messages. We can read the roundtable correspondence, unless anybody had questions about the roundtable.
I should be able, like, I can always just
Okay.
put something together and send it to you for review.
Yeah.
Before
I'm good.
you're comfortable with that.
I wanted to make sure that we thank the team, the groups for the Arts Walk for
Yes,
continuing at the Parksburg group, and is it the VA?
the Thornbury
The
BIA
Thornbury,
and
yeah.
then the Clarksburg Village Association.
Yeah, so it's gonna happen. Yeah, we're very.
They're doing it.
The great thing is also we created a proof of concept and they saw the value and so now they're taking it over.
Yeah,
Which is a good way of going, but as long as we still get credit for the initial
we
idea.
are very happy
Yeah.
that they're continuing our initiative.
And that was the
Yeah, the
intention
next
all along.
meeting's been,
Yes,
so I
Um,
will not be able to attend that meeting. Unfortunately.
So the meeting.
Actually, June the 26th.
We also. We have been getting motions to release the key messages.
so can we have a mover that we approve the release of key messages as will be certain?
Are you gonna circulate them to us?
Before they go out to the entire board? Unless,
Or as
Or
identified by the CEO?
as created developed by the CEO? Yes,
Consultation with the chair.
as developed by.
Yes.
consultation
Yeah.
with chair.
You got it.
Okay. So can I have a mover? Great, Chris, seconder. Sorry, all in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next meeting date, so.
Good job, the material out so I can comment. We're just going to BC on the 26th.
Yeah, I'll still send everything to you.
So I'll be able to review stuff.
Great.
I'll be able to comment during the meeting.
We'll be here. Okay, so, to adjourn, recommending that this board does now adjourn at, what are we, 4:45?
Yeah.
Do you need a motion for that?
45
Just declare.
PM, okay, declared.
Declared.
Good job, Tony.
Thank you.
Well done, Joanna.
It survived. It was at a very